You seem preoccupied today, Marc-Antoine states with a knowing smile. His blade lightly taps my chest protector. Arrogant. Careful, I warn, and the man lifts his hands in mock surrender. The local Roland master-at-arms adjusts his mask and brushes his intact white chest plate. I assume the guard he showed me and we resume our bout. Remember, this is not a hammer, the man remarks as I attempt, in vain, to smash his guard aside. I am faster and stronger than him, and so I could crush him, but that would defeat the purpose of the exercise. With Noel mostly focused on brushing stone, his only other permanent neighbor, Marc-Antoine, was left bereft of a fencing partner and I was only too happy to oblige. Unfortunately, old habits die hard. The old master realized rather quickly that I had absolutely no proficiency with a blade, at all. Swords are the noble weapon, Ariane of the Nirari. You cannot keep coasting on speed and positioning alone. Or so he said. I believe I did a good job coasting so far. His comments keep fusing as he effortlessly keeps up with my bumbling. Don't let me hit your blade. You can move the tip of your sword up and down with minimum hand movement. Do not let it stand still. Jumping back is fine, but we are trying to get you used to the flow, my dear. Do not always disengage, parry and counter. Are you not faster than me? Cover your side. Guard up. Guard up. Marc-Antoine is relentless. Every attack I make is easily parried or dodged, while his are flowing strikes that meld into one another, all of them deadly. He also tends to swing into my own attacks on occasion, as well as get into my guard and other annoying maneuvers. Part of me is impressed by his technical expertise which goes beyond just moving well. His battle instincts are superb. Another part of me wants to pick up my spear and skewer him against the wall like a fat butterfly. I could do it by playing on my superior physical abilities. Unfortunately, he is right. Technique is my weak point, despite years of practice. I am not halfway bad, I am just contending with a man who has dedicated himself to the craft for several mortal lifespans with the obsession of the Rolands. Frustrating. Sparring is only part of the practice. Marc-Antoine also makes me work on slow dance-like moves that Nami had also ingrained into me. They allow me to appreciate the realm of possibilities the sword offers in terms of movements. Many of those are either aerial or use walls and other vertical surfaces for quick changes of direction, which I believe was designed for vampires. I enjoy this part a lot as I find it relaxing. After 1 hour of practice, my improvised mentor raises a fist to signal the end of the session. You are doing well, Ariane. I am confident that I can turn you into a half-decent sword fighter by the turn of the century. Ha! Do not take umbrage, devourer. Your dedication does you credit, and my lessons will serve you well. We will focus on the basics while you study the arcane arts. Your next teacher will have a solid foundation to build on. I am surprised that you would invest so much time in me. I am, after all, but a guest. Sword fighting is my life's work, Ariane. Raising a new talent is its own reward. Are you not concerned that I could turn it against you, far in the future? I jokingly ask. Marc-Antoine's smile only widens. Then it might be my turn to learn, who knows? I mirror his good humor as we clean our blades and gear ourselves at his insistence. The sun is still high above and it will be another hour before I can leave the compound. Will you train with anyone else tonight? I ask, a bit curious as to why only we practice. His smile falls off a bit. How I wish others were as dedicated as you are. Noel is too focused on his studies. As for the others, they seldom ever come back anymore. They all have their own dens in Southwark or the Northern Liberties. We have become a scattered bunch, he admits with regret. Forgive me for saying so, but you all seem disinterested in the affairs of your domain, I risk. To criticize your own host is always considered a faux pas, especially in our society. Recent developments have forced my hand, however. Marc-Antoine shrugs helplessly. You must understand, we have held this town for over a century now. There are few opportunities to explore, and fewer still now that power shifts elsewhere. We are victims of our own success. I am forced to blink at this outrageous declaration. Nothing to explore. In a city of tens of thousands. I see that you do not believe me. Perhaps, in a few years, new mage cabals will make a move on us, blinded by our lack of activity. For now, we are at peace and our rule is uncontested. This is not right. We should always seek new challenges. To stagnate is to fall. We are designed for the hunt. Alas, our current leadership is not conducive to vast projects. The Blade Master hesitates, perhaps aware that with this innocuous remark, he opened Pandora's box. Was he always this interested in paleontology? I ask, plunging into the breach. No, the other answer with some hesitation, at least not while he was in France. Noël was Dominique's lover. He fell out of grace. I heard about Dominique. The current leader of your clan, yes. Indeed. A curious and magnetic figure they are. They. I have already said too much. Suffice to say, the man is taking some time away for himself and I admit that we have a tendency to focus a bit too much on our distractions. I choose not to comment and move to my room to get changed. The Roland disinterest in ruling is not my most dire concern. Tonight, I have an appointment with my newest toy. I look down on the red brick building below. Salazar is on time, alone as requested and dressed with much more care than yesterday. He wears a well-tailored gray suit and his hair is combed back under a clean bowler hat. As I watch, he removes a silver watch from a coat pocket, which he nervously inspects. He turns left and right, his eyes scanning the deserted street. I grab my cloak and tug my dress between my legs before falling by his side to prevent the displaced air from making it flap. I have already been standing there for a second when Salazar turns again. Nga. Jesus, woman. Sorry. I did not see you there. Silence. I mean, sorry milady, good evening. Would you like to go now? Aha. Lead the way, I order in a flat voice, though internally I am having an unexpected amount of fun. Salazar is jumpy. It makes me feel playful. We start walking south along the still busy streets of uniform brick buildings. Here, gas lights cast their warm glows from inside their glass prisons on pedestrians and passing carriages alike. Traditional clothing in drab colors abound, as befit the city's Quaker inheritance. The fire is not in the fashion but in the voices of the groups we come across. Philadelphia is host to the Second Bank of the United States, and the president, that arrogant loon, has decided to defund it. The gall. The entire town is aflutter with snide remarks and consternated rebukes. My companion does not share in the general outrage, only casting looks left and right with the vigilance of someone who expects trouble. Slowly, I compress my aura until it almost disappears and walk slightly behind the tall man. We turn left into a deserted street. Salazar's shoulders tighten when, I assume, he only hears one set of steps. The mage flinches and turns frightfully, only to jump once more when our eyes meet. I stand at the edge of his personal space, slightly to the side, and make no effort to breathe nor blink. Yes. I ask. Nothing. It's nothing. Sorry. We're not far now. From a stable, I mean. The place is a bit farther off. We'll get a horse for the evening. You can ride horses, right? I will find my own, not to worry. Oh good, good. I know the stable owner. You can rent a horse there. I mean, I will pay for the horse and you can ride it. Would that be acceptable? I will find my own, I repeat curtly. Right. Right. It's not far. We continue, and this time, I slowly increase my aura while focusing on the man. As soon as he flinches, I reduce it again, then increase again. I am not being facetious, I am conducting a study on intimidation and destabilization methods on unaffiliated mages. The fact that I am having a tremendous amount of fun is merely a side effect of my rigorous scientific investigation. It most definitely is. "We're here," Salazar mumbles as we leave the well-ordered row of buildings to more open grounds, dotted with both fields and warehouses in the distance. A long wood construction takes the side of the road here, and from there comes the familiar smell of equines and their dejections. A few nays filter from the now closed door, and in front of them, a burly man sweeps the ground under the light of a pair of lanterns. He raises his bearded face as we approach and only relaxes when he recognizes my companion. I stay near the entrance and leave the man to his business. He approaches the stablemaster with a confident stride, and the two of them clasp hands like old acquaintances. "Sauls, good to see you. Who's the bird?" "Shoo," the other man urges with a suddenly fearful glance. Both of them turn to my silhouette standing alone by the roadside. I keep a neutral face and, once more, make no particular effort to blink. "I'll tell you later. You got a horse for me?" Straw isn't too tired and he's already saddled. "Will he do?" the other whispers back. "Fine." Salazar follows the other man inside, the pair now equally nervous. He appears to hesitate at the threshold as he expected me to follow inside, and I do not, but in the end, he decides to move forward. I do not even have to whistle for Métis to stop by my side. The noble steed comes for only three things: food, extreme violence leading to the acquisition of said food, and showing off. I easily sit side saddle on her back, with my gloved hands on my lap. And I wait. After a few minutes, one of the large doors of the barn opened to let out the stablemaster, Salazar, and a dun mount of middling size. The men freeze when they see me, mouths open and everything. The gelding by their side lowers his head and turns it to the side, casting a fearful glance at my Métis in all her glory. My impatient friend stomps a hoof, and the unnaturally heavy noise breaks the men from their fearful reverie. The stablemaster decides that, perhaps, the entrance is sufficiently swept for the night. He pushes Salazar out and barricades himself with the loud thud of a plank resolutely shoved in place. The horse and rider pair is left stuck outside between a vampire and a hard place. "Well?" I demand with as much queenly scorn as I can manage. From his face, I believe I am doing well. Métis assists with a low-pitched neigh of impatience that sends the pair on their way, post-haste. The mage hastily grabs a lantern, then goes forth at the edge of a gallop, both himself and his mount focusing steadily on the path ahead as the heavy impact of nightmarish hooves leaves no doubt as to what follows. Such unexpected fun. What an amusing bouquet coming from my dear guide. Truly, our brand of humor does require a victim. Salazar rides south, then west towards Schuylkill. The night darkens as human sources of light grow far between. Soon, the lantern becomes a small halo of radiance surrounded on all sides by the encroaching shadows. Would you mind riding by my side?" the man bleats pitifully. "Don't mind if I do." I kick Métis forward. In a second, she has closed the distance. Salazar yelps and jumps as we burst from the night, then he struggles for a few seconds to keep his mount under control. Mother F Jesus. The scowl dies on his face as our eyes meet. "Ah, I wanted to inform you of a few things." "Yes." Silence. A pearl of sweat snails its way down the man's forehead. "That is to say, there were 3 sites of attack. We will go to the most recent one, which happened 4 days ago. And then the others afterward. At least, we think they are. We did not suspect a thing at first, you see. The first looked like a tragic accident. We should start with the most recent one. The other sites are most likely too altered to reveal anything useful." "Sure. Interesting." Once focused on his task, Salazar instantly calms down. Even his posture changes. Do you suspect anyone? I finally ask. That is the problem. I suspect everyone and no one. The first deaths were a very tight-knit group of mages following a Christian ethos, while the second victims were a couple belonging to a loose alliance of practitioners from South Germany. The last group were blood mages, or close enough, hence why I wanted to inquire about Ezekiel's whereabouts the night of the murder. Salazar laughs, then turns it into a cough with a measuring glance in my direction. Perhaps I should not make light of my teacher in front of his rival. I just do not feel the kind of kinship I had with many of the other mortals I have worked with. Ezekiel and I are bound in a professional relationship. That is all. Nevertheless, I admit, I have behaved in an uncourteous manner. I will not criticize him publicly any further. In any case, my companion continues after a pause, none of those groups were even remotely allied. I expect that the culprit is either an independent agent or a splinter group. They took great pain in erasing all tracks, therefore their purpose is not to sow discord by planting false evidence. My suspicion is that the victims were used in a blood ritual. On site? I ask with surprise. It is possible and, in fact, the best option. Criminals and civilians alike severely underestimate the difficulty of carrying bodies across a populated area unchallenged. I see. As I say that, we finally arrive. In the middle of a fallow field stand the remains of barn-like structures, or at least it appears to be as the building has been devastated by a fire of great intensity. Only a few blackened beams remain pointing skyward in uneven clumps, like the rotten teeth of an evil witch. The roof is entirely collapsed in a solid pile of coal covered in soot-stained snow. The silence is deafening. I step down from Métis and slowly circle the wreck. There is not a single aura to be found here. The ground, trampled by a great many steps, offers nothing of value until I come across an anomaly. On the side and to the left, I find a secondary pile of ashes linked to the main house by a snake of darkened ground. I lean forward until my nose is close enough for the frosted grass to tickle. A whiff is enough. The heavy smell of pine remains over that of charred vegetation. Terebinthine, or turpentine as it is known. Turpentine can be used as an accelerant, a substance that increases the speed of a chemical process. In this case, it would be the fire. Whoever started this arson was meticulous, but also terribly inefficient. It would have been much simpler and safer to cover the walls than ignite multiple locations at once, unless they were so afraid of discovery that they had to leg it at the first spark. This is quite curious. I find nothing else noticeable and return to Salazar, who had been blinking owlishly from inside his little safe place in a foolish attempt to locate me. I, of course, approach him from his blind side. Salazar. Eep. Were there any wards in place inside the barn? Damn it, yes. Yes, there were, but they were purged in the fire just like most of anything. That is why we highly suspect someone from the magical community. A group of mundanes would not have known how to break through without causing an alarm. This place might be remote, but the first one was not. It was a school, with houses around. A fight would have attracted attention. Especially a firefight. Hence why it could not be the order of Gabriel. I am not discounting them yet, though there have been no signs of them showing up. They have been known to use stealth when convenient. I just find it hard to believe that they could successfully kill a dozen people without alerting everyone around. What about that cottage? I ask, pointing at a solid stone farm a few hundred yards away. What about it? Did you interrogate the person there? Salazar has the grace to act embarrassed. We did not think it necessary. I mean, the building is rather far, he replies somewhat defensively. Well, let's give it a try, at least, I suggest sweetly, and the man hurries to nod along. We walk to the isolated house and easily spot the light of candles from what appears to be the living room. The door looks solid, and locked tight. Make the lantern brighter, I order in a low voice. You can't see. Not for us, for the one who lives inside, I hiss with annoyance. Salazar obeys and I knock on the door. Inside, a breath hitches. One inhabitant. A woman, from the footsteps. I pull Salazar back a bit and raise his arms so that we are well lit. I then channel the Hastings essence. My posture changes immediately. My back bends a bit, and I cross my arms protectively under my chest. From unmoving, I let my eyes dart left and right in a typical prey fashion. I allow my composure to crumble until what is left is a scared young woman looking for answers, though she should know better. The person inside inspects us for a few seconds through a thick glass window. This is the moment of truth. If she refuses to open the door, there is not much I can do, and yet I remain confident. The hinges groan and we find ourselves face to face with a woman in her 40s wielding a fire poker and a mighty scowl. As expected, curiosity has triumphed over common sense. We do not speak. I let her finish her inspection while Salazar is apparently too busy gawping at me and my change of behavior. The Hastings essence guides me into regular breaths, shifts and other quirks that make a living person more relatable. I can even tell that my cheeks have reddened under the influence of the biting cold. Who are yous, and what the hell do you want? She is messy but clean. Her clothes are unadorned and chosen for comfort rather than for style. She is still the kind of mature beauty that Loth would go after were it not for her open hostility. A widow, I'd wager, or someone who was at the losing end of a social conflict and ended up a pariah. Our eyes meet and I taste her emotions with a light touch. Fear, anger, frustration, curiosity. I need that last one the most. Sorry to bother you at this late hour, ma'am. My name is Ariane and I lost my brother a few nights ago. In there, I finish, pointing at the blackened husk of the barn. Oh yes, the embers of curiosity are fanned. I do not even need to push. People are lying to me about what happened to him. They say it was an accident, but it is all nonsense. I know it is late, but would you mind answering a few questions? Without missing a beat, my interlocutor turns to the mage at my side and points the poker at him in a vaguely threatening fashion. And who is this? She asks, her suspicion surging to the top. Salazar is still looking at my meek figure as if I had grown a pair of horns. My cousin. I took him with me for safety, you understand. Please do not mind him. He is a bit touched in the head, I deadpan. The experienced caster's expression flinches, anger at being called a simpleton warring in his mind with the realization that breaking character would have immediate and unfortunate consequences. Hello, he eventually says with a forced smile. I see, the woman replies before returning her attention to me, you said you had questions? Yes. If it's not too much bother. I would have come tomorrow but time is of the essence, if indeed this was not the accident the authorities claim it is. Yes, they would, wouldn't they? Addled-brained gossipers and cowards, the lot of them. Ah, excellent. Hostility successfully redirected. Well, come on in and hurry, for all the heat is gone. Quickly. I step in and allow myself a smile of pride as Salazar closes the door behind us. Our host drags us through a corridor that separates what I guess is the workshop from the living part. From the rolls of fabric stored on planks against the wall, I assume that she is a seamstress. We turn right through a creaking door and into the lit space we saw from afar. The room we now stand on clearly started as a kitchen until she dragged in a bed. One comfortable and well-used couch lies close to a dying fire with a book and a ceramic cup of tea placed on a small table beside. The walls are covered in shelves filled with pots, jars, books, and trinkets. The smell of human and stew saturates the air in a mix that is not entirely unpleasant. It feels cozy. This is the heart of the house. I can feel power as ancient and fundamental as crosses and the Watcher itself pulsing softly. One word from our host and I will be flung out, swatted like a fly by the very nature of locale. I never harbored any ill will towards the prickly woman. Even if I did, I would hesitate now under the influence of this I do not know what to call it. I am a guest and a guest is respectful. Yes, that is the proper way of things. I did not catch your name, I remark. You can call me Paulina, the woman grumbles while removing piles of folded covers and clothes from two small stools. She frees the seats and puts them against the table. Salazar attempts to help but is quickly dissuaded by a murderous glance. In the end, he leans against a window. Care for some tea? It's not good but it's hot. I would love some, I reply, causing another jolt of surprise in my companion. Even if I could not drink, any vampire worth their salt can pretend to sip with consummate grace. Clearly, Salazar has wrong expectations. The woman silently hands me a large chipped mug filled halfway with steaming liquid. I grasp the body of the container with two hands, feeling the warmth travel through the fabric of my gloves. The scent of black tea travels in wafts and I take a quick sip. The piping hot liquid almost scalds my tongue and leaves behind a sweet aftertaste. Honey? I ask. My only indulgence, the older woman grunts. I cast a quick glance at the cover of the book she is reading. A collection of romantic poetry, nothing scandalous. Thank you. Would you be comfortable answering a few questions for me? Yes, I suppose, she replies with apparent impatience, but I know better. Her posture is attentive and with the bond between us deepening, I can taste more. She is defensive and cautious as the poker still by her side easily reveals. Beneath, however, are the standard traits of the exiled. Loneliness. A need for validation. Paulina's education is respectable if the rows of books are any indication, and she appears rather distrustful. I therefore judged that showing proper diction and a bit of spine would endear her enough to share what she knows. I understand that my brother gathered here relatively often. Yes, twice per week without fail. He and his friends would come with platters of food and spend the evening together doing whatever it is they did. Do you know what this was about? She asks with a challenge. Not exactly, but I doubt that it was anything illegal. He never lacked for money. What was his name? James. James Dalton, I reply immediately. The core of lying is to create another truth rather than improvising your way through the conversation. That way, there are less opportunities for contradictions. James is one of my go-to names for male relatives. As for the name Dalton, I had not used it in a long time. Perhaps I am growing lonely. James, huh? Sorry for your loss, she says, and I realize that with the help of the Hastings essence, I had revealed enough weakness and grief for her to latch on. Not your fault. In any case, were you here the night the barn burnt? Yes, I was, but I feel the need to apologize. I know very little. By the time I woke up, the fire was already raging outside. You sleep in this room, correct? I say and point at the small cot. Yes. In wintertime, warming the entire house is wasteful since my Henry died. I just stay down here. Your windows face the barn. Were you woken up by the light? No. The windows are not large enough and the bed is low so the glow never shone into my face. It's the noise that did it. Their roof collapsed. I see. Did anything coming from the barn ever wake you up before? Paulina considers the question seriously for a few seconds, clearly showing that those meetings have been going on for some time. Maybe twice last year during celebrations. They were obviously quite drunk, including the women. She frowns with disapproval, but then her expression softens. It was not much. Just loud conversations and raucous laughs, and it did not last. They were mostly a quiet bunch and I am not one to pry, so I left them alone. Why? You're thinking of something, she adds. I can share that much. The accident did not have a single survivor, and I learned yesterday that they found the bodies throughout the house. I find it unlikely that not a single person could escape. Even if they were all asleep and slowly choked on smoke, the people closest to the ground should have survived long enough to escape. You suspect foul play. I do not suspect, I correct her, I know there was foul play. The fact that nothing woke you up shows that they did not scream. They were all probably dead by the time the fire claimed them. I darken my expression as Paulina gulps her tea to ease the tension. It could have been someone on the inside. Or a group of bandits, Paulina adds with some alarm, do you think? I doubt that they were chosen at random. You are probably safe, I reassure her. I pray that you are right, the woman finally adds. This is all she knew, and it confirmed that whatever killed them did so through successful infiltration, one way or another. After a few more remarks, I take my leave with a quiet Salazar in tow. We head back to the horses and ride to the next site, as planned. You are not what I expected, the man finally remarks as I ponder on what we learnt. What did you expect then? I'm not sure. More grandstanding and ordering around. More putting that woman under your spell and dominating her into telling her everything you want to know. A more vampiric display of might. Yes. That. I could ignore him, but in the end decide not to. As amusing as it is to tease the mage, I must not forget that he is an ally in our quest to hunt a dangerous foe. I must not let my fun stand in the way of efficiency. Or at least, not too much. Power is a crutch. Use it too often and you forget how to operate without it, I finally explain. This remark is as valid for me as ever. Such an occurrence would never happen in my territory. I would use my vast network of agents and informants to track every possible culprit, resorting to extreme measures to stop them before they could claim a second victim. I would unleash werewolves in the streets in human form, and have Mage scry every pebble. I would bring all my resources to bear. Here, cut off from most of them, I am forced once again to rely on myself as well as unreliable agents. I welcome the practice. Time honing one's skill is never wasted. You were also much less, vampire-y, Salazar continues, passing a hand in his spiky black hair. I notice that he looks a bit miffed. In answer, I channel Hastings' essence once more and, this time, assume the persona of the bashful young country lass, intimidated by the handsome and savvy city man before me. Would this be better, Mr. Salazar? I ask in a sweet voice and I shyly glance down. The man recoils. You know what, that's even worse, he complains. I stop my impersonation and return to my old glacial self with a knowing smile that I make sure he sees. You know what I truly am. If I wore a different skin, you would find it disturbing. You don't mean that literally, do you? The wearing a skin part. If my eyes roll back any farther up my skull, I shall soon see down my own throat. Please be patient with me, yes. I am not some century-old aristocrat of the night, the man protests. Ha! I have never heard us be called that, but I suppose it is fitting. Also, he thinks that I am a century old. I am wise and mature beyond my years. Even the mortals can tell. Enough of this, I reluctantly say to stop his flattery, we have 2 more sites to visit. Lead the way. It takes us 3 more hours to inspect everything. The couple was killed in a shed at the back of their property while the second group was indeed slain in a school. The way the fire started was exactly the same, except the first time where the distance is significantly shorter. There is not much to see, Salazar declares, mid-yawn. On the contrary, there is plenty to understand. I do believe it is high time we met the vampire in charge of this location. The murder of the couple happened on the master's territory. The 2 others belong to a courtier named Lydia, unless I am mistaken. You need her permission to act. I could bypass her and go directly to Noelle, though that would be discourteous. We will visit her soon. First, We will need a little bit of magical and mundane assistance and you are going to help me. Ezekiel clasps his hands and frowns in an attempt to look more respectable. Following a rather forceful insistence from one of the members of our little coterie. 3 pairs of eyes turn to me. I shall introduce the arcane mysteries of rituals slightly ahead of schedule. Now, Terence, please remind us how we normally get the symbolic element of casting. From the prepared circuits in our own gauntlets, or I guess you could slap some on the ground with a bit of chalk. Yes indeed, Ezekiel answers, bristling at the informal answer, and what are the limits of such methods, Margaret? They place the burden of visualization on the will of the caster, forcing her to exert herself tremendously, the dark-haired girl answers with the solemn voice of a bishop at mass. Correct. You cannot glance at your gauntlet to look at the runes for help, especially not while in the middle of intensive tasks. Such as running away from me. And so, the gauntlet and its runes are a convenient yet demanding tool. Rituals, by comparison, allow us to cast spells of great powers provided we have what, Ariane? Time, material, location, and company, I automatically answer, quoting Loth. Company. Some spells demand several practitioners working in concert. Like Scarguard artillery spells. You need 3 people for that if you want more than a few shots. Yes indeed. We will address such spells at a later date. A much later date, as they require a very high degree of training, compatibility, and trust between the casters. We all look at each other without comment. Anyway, Ezekiel continues with some embarrassment, you are correct. A ritual requires a proper surface to inscribe the rune. The materials themselves are quite important as well because using chalk will barely give you an edge. Time is, of course, necessary if you want to write down more than 3 symbols. A ritual is therefore demanding, but they make casting a spell significantly easier. Any spell with more than 12 symbols will require a circle, even for the more experienced mages. I bet Frost could do 20 and look you in the eye with a smirk as he cast it. Not to mention Semiramis. Ezekiel knows a lot of theory but few people. It is still a bit early, but you have all been diligent and I think a small break is in order. We shall head outside to a proper ritual location. Terence raises his hand, droopy eyes widened in apprehension. When you mean outside, you do not mean the city proper, right? No, Terence. We will go to an abandoned barn a few hundred yards away. I merely wish to limit the risks of our living quarters catching fire. Okay. I am slightly annoyed by the use of that detestable acronym, and so I decide to tease the lad a bit as we climb up the stairs and out into the empty alley. What is the matter, Terence, afraid that some horrible fiendish creature will descend upon you? I ask with a bit of fawn. Not at all, he deadpans, merely that I must call her mother and listen to her whine until the rooster crows. I smile at that. Wit. From that boar. Perhaps I judged him too hastily. You know, I could rid you of her, for the right price, I whisper in a sulky voice. I'm afraid I must refuse. I would not want to deny the devil his last few years of tranquility. All right, that was not bad. I allow myself a chuckle. Terence and I close the procession as we 4 cross our way through the abandoned district, with Margaret sometimes casting an incredulous glance backward. I realize that I only look slightly older than them, and it was apparently enough for the socially deprived young man to form a bond. We must be quite the show, them in crimson robes and me in my more traditional blue one. I suspect that any pedestrian witnessing the moment and trying to guess which one of us might be the blood-drinking immortal monster might act on false assumptions. In any case, it does not take long for Ezekiel to lead us to a derelict factory. The older man fiddles with the rusty lock protecting the gate into the inner courtyard. He finally manages to coax the thing open and we make our way through piles of rotten crates and broken supplies. The building itself is pockmarked bricks and misery, slouched like an old bar fly under a filthy coat of grayish snow. Only after we have entered its innards does Ezekiel allow himself some light and my companion stop stumbling around. The smell of mildew had, outside, been tolerable. Jesus, what a dump, Margaret swears, finally breaking her Queen of Darkness persona. Yes, well, at least we do not risk collateral damage, Ezekiel replies defensively. Except on ourselves, I finish. I can survive a falling building, but between the frail mage and a support beam, I would bet on the harder contestant. I assure you that I have used these facilities before and we are quite safe. Here, our fearless teacher says as he goes around the derelict building, lighting lanterns. They cast dancing shadows on the walls as they come to life one by one. In the center of the empty floor sits a silvery circle dug into the grimy floor. Contrary to my expectations, the interior is clean beside some dust and the terrible smell fades away from the continuous influx of fresh air coming from the still open door at our back. The circle you see will serve as a base for the following ritual. You will draw the remaining symbols of the classical mage bolt using the paste you will find in the container by the entrance, then cast the spell at this target. At the end of the factory, Ezekiel has painted a series of large concentric circles with a bull's eye in the middle. I can tell from the numerous impacts marring the wall that we are not the first to test the old wreck's structural integrity. Let us start the exercise. Margaret, you go first. Do you remember the runes? The young woman straightens her back and marches through the dust like a duchess at her own wedding. She picks up a pot of paint and brush and marches right back. The impression is only slightly ruined by her difficulties opening said pot. Eventually, she applies a thick paste inside the circle forming the 4 necessary runes for a bolt, power, momentum, projectile, and direction. They are all rather basic and it does not take long for her to succeed, then link them together according to the Western Standard runes of inscription. Power comes first, then she links momentum and direction together as a secondary principle with direction as the catalyst. She delicately places the pot and brush on the side and stands in the middle of her work with a hint of worry. You are doing well, Margaret. Just cast, Ezekiel encourages her. She turns to us and we all show signs of support. Reinvigorated, the apprentice which raises a naked hand and bellows. Bolt. Her croaking voice does not prevent her success. A translucent bolt of force erupts from the edge of the circle, distorting the air in a wide area. A thud sounds as the missile impacts the far wall and more dust rains down from the rafters. The mortals sneeze. Ezekiel trots over to open the door of the far end to create a draft of fresh air before tuberculosis and the watcher knows what else wipes out the newest generation of mages in one fell swoop. I have rarely been so glad not to have to breathe. Ezekiel's foresight is proven when he steps to the circle and peels off the now solidified paste, removing the symbols cleanly and easily. We will each have the opportunity to work with a pristine setting. Terence is next. He appears much more worried at first, and yet he calms down and focuses as soon as the tracing begins. He takes no break between drawing and casting. The pot is barely down before he, too, successfully impacts the target. We clap as soon as our arms are no longer covering our heads. Finally, my turns come. Hold, Ariane. I know that casting does not come so naturally to you, and I made some inquiries. I believe that you would perform better if we were to add a blood rune to your construct. I thought we would work without blood magic. I ask, a bit surprised. Indeed, and this will be valid in the future. In this case, we will make an exception. It might take too long for you to activate all 4 runes and the purpose of the exercise is to experience ritual magic anyway. Adding a blood rune will bring the spell closer to the nature of your condition, the man finishes hesitantly. Ah, I see. I was repeatedly told that vampires take on blood magic more easily than its less sacrificial counterpart. It would be unfortunate to limit myself to learning what I am good at, but for the sake of the exercise I suppose. Remember that power is no substitute for technique and effort. I know, I informed the man somewhat drilly. I take the brush and step in the circle. I trace the runes at 4 times the speed of the mortals, drawing both on my control and my drawing experience. Power. Momentum. Projectile. Direction. I finish and place the pot on the side. The last part will be done without a brush. I pull my sleeve up to reveal a pale forearm, place a talon against an artery and slice deeply. The 2 young ones hiss in sympathy, but I ignore them. The pain is nothing compared to witch fingers. I push the memory away and smear 2 fingertips with dark blood. Tracing the last rune is a time-consuming and tedious process, not least because I need to add paint several times. Eventually, the work is done. The blood rune is visually different from the rest. Power is square and undaunted. Momentum is lithe and spiked like a lightning fork, but blood is alive. It twists organically like some nightmarish being. I feel kinship with this one. It was drawn from another script, more ancient and primal than the well-ordered code now used by astronomers and mathematicians. It speaks of dark caves lit by a tentative fire while a storm roars outside, of defeats and victories. Of squelched organs. I expose my still butchered arm and feel the ritual ease the spell into my mind. Power from blood. Momentum and projectile from power. Direction given to the birthed arrow. A trail of dark fluid snakes up from the jagged tear into a needle-thin dart. I feel more pain now, deeper, more intimate as the aura is forcefully dragged from my essence. The arrow is me and from me and it awaits my will. Never since casting that first darkness spell have I felt magic click so easily. I understand blood on a fundamental level that no mage can ever hope to attain, no matter how hard they study. The ancient power is there, for a price. One I have paid many times. Blood bolt. This time air is not displaced, and the noise is not a blunt sound of impact, but the ghastly crunch of material brought over the edge of its mechanical resistance. There, in the bull's eye, now stands a minuscule hole. Beyond that is the black of the night. I lower my hand. The power is spent. And this is the might of well-executed blood magic, Ezekiel ends in a satisfied voice. This is just plain stupid. How can we hope to stand against her kind with that pathetic little blast you showed us? We should learn blood magic too, the girl whines. You will learn magic my way and at my speed, Margaret. First, it will take you years of practice to wield blood with such mastery, and second, if you think it will be enough to save you from a vampire, then I'm afraid that you are sorely mistaken. Enough. We are here now, and you will keep casting until I give you leave. This is just unfair, the woman eventually grumbles. My presence is giving you the wrong sort of expectations, Margaret. You are infinitely more likely to face a bandit or an enemy practitioner than you are to face any one of us. Besides, Ezekiel is correct. You do not want to fight us, even with magic, I explain in a rare attempt to better our relationship. If you are so bloody strong, why do you even learn magic to begin with? Given the same choice as me, would you not? I answer with patience. Margaret stops to consider, her black brows furrowed in annoyance until she comes to a realization. Her expression softens then, until the naked ambition fades to reveal the rather young mind under it. It'd be a shame not to. Precisely. Magic is a versatile tool. Combat spells are but a small part of it. With this, we return our attention and efforts to ritual casting with one major difference. As each student painstakingly redraw his runes, the other leans towards me like a Florentine conspirator. Is it true that you can slap a man's head off without blinking? Yes, we do not need to blink. Can vampires get erections? Get your mind out of the gutter, Margaret. Also, yes. If you only drink blood, does it mean you only have to pee? We are magical creatures, Terence. We do not digest per se. If you wake up at twilight, does it mean that you can wake up inside a steep valley then run up the mountain and then it's day again so you fall asleep? I have no idea. Is it true that you can slip under a steel door? Technically yes, but the steel door will not survive the experience. And so on and so forth. Eventually, the questions tarry as the pair start stumbling around like drunkards, yawning terribly. Ezekiel wisely decides to call it a night and we escort them back to their quarter where they promptly collapse. A moment of your time, Ariane. I have prepared what you asked. Are you quite sure you want to proceed that way? I could still come with you. Do not concern yourself. I have a plan. And now is the time to implement it. A killer you say? My host asks with a frown. The light of her hearth covers one side of her face like carefully applied powder while the other remains deathly pale. Her concern appears genuine. Yes. I was made aware of the deaths you are referring to. The lack of reaction of affiliated factions led me to believe that those were just accidents. Those are, without a doubt, murder. The signs are clear. I already explained the reasons for my involvement. Mireille accepted my explanations without comments and with her undivided attention. I am pleased that she does not share Noel's apathy. This is extremely preoccupying. So far, we have maintained a rather hands-off policy in the hope that it would lure more mages here. I can tolerate squabbles on my territory. An indiscriminate murderer is a different matter, one I cannot ignore. I will track them down. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I would not come to you with just suspicions, I interrupt her. I have a way to track the culprit. Do you now? She answers with obvious surprise. I nod and take a compass-like contraption from a satchel by my side. It is clearly magical in nature and emits a faint aura. I suspected that the scenes of the murder might have been destroyed to hide what, or who, was taken from them. That is why my associate and I scoured the houses of the victims for personal objects in an attempt to work a tracking spell. It seems that I was wrong, as there were indeed no survivors that we can tell. There was, however, one hit. A faint one. According to the mage who made the working, it should link to a personal belonging with some blood on it. Hopefully the killer made a mistake and left it in their lair. Mireille is suddenly more animated. She tilts her head, eyes unblinking. Would this work? Should we go now? That would be for the best. I was hoping that we could go together for my own tranquility of mind. Naturally. As long as you agree that this is my hunt, as we are operating on my territory. I understand. I do not. Torin let me have the lead on a few hunts and I am not sure how he managed to shelf his pride. She is weak, or at least, weaker. I took the initiative. How dare she? But no. I must be patient. I grab my cloak and fasten it as Mireille equips herself with a short cutlass. We leave her small mansion, passing a few maids on the way. The atmosphere is relaxed and the mortals barely spare us a glance. Business as usual. Outside, I activate my tracking spell. The construct awakes and the needle spins once in its glass before settling west. Mireille and I walk on foot through fields and forests, leaving no trace behind and requiring no light. We are two ghosts in the night. It takes us an hour before the air grows wet and the smell of frigid water hints at the appearance of the Schuylkill. The forest grows denser now and we are forced to circle around snow-covered thickets until we find a path cut through the vegetation. Barely larger than a deer trail, it carries us deeper until the sky is crisscrossed by layers of naked branches. We soon emerge onto open ground and the river now flows before us, placid in all its murky glory. A single chair made from severed logs and rotten twine thrones in its middle. Empty bottles line its feet in single file like goslings following their mother. A fishing spot. Right, I say in a low voice. We continue with some difficulty. Undergrowth as dense as this one is not easy to navigate, especially now with the biting cold making every twig a rigid claw waiting to shatter. There are no thick trunks we could latch onto and jump either. Fortunately, fate is on our side. The line of trees recedes in favor of waist-high grass growing on uneven ground. We hop from tuft to tuft for a few minutes longer and finally arrive in view of our destination. A few dozen yards away, at the river's bend, someone built a tiny misshapen lodge hanging over the flowing waters. The main floor is at the top of a small mound, then a covered corridor dips towards the river and a small room that will be washed down at nature's first temper tantrum. Not a light in sight, as I expected. I hope this trip was not in vain. Shall we? I offer. What if this is a home? A home would be lived in at night, I reply with conviction. We approach from the low ground and I force a shutter open. The snap of flimsy wood causes no reaction. I climb in, courtier in tow. Aha! I cannot help but declaim with Binglesque glee. The interior of the room is filled and well used, belying its decrepit appearance. Turpentine saturates the air in a thick cloud coming from 3 barrels stashed in a corner. Other supplies are separated in orderly piles on the swept ground. A single desk sits against the wall to the right of the passage leading up. There are no lanterns. I think we found our foe's den, I idly comment. Well, he's obviously not here, Mireille observes. Can you check the workspace for hints to his identity? Certainly. I step forward with confidence and immediately dodge low and to the left as her cutlass misses my head by a finger. I turn and claw her across the throat before the return hit. Black blood spurts from the wound. Black blood no longer spurts from the wound. She healed. I stop the blade with an arm guard. It bites into the steel sheet with a resonating clang. Fast. I dodge under a swipe and my return strike eviscerates her. Once more, her wounds close at an alarming speed, as if time itself lost its grip on her body. The next hit slides against my left shoulder, opening a long furrow. Need to focus. Instead of falling back, I push forward. She gives up on the reach advantage and starts using her weapon as an overly large knife. She is relentless and ignores my counterstrikes. No courtier should heal that fast from a master's talon. You can't have him. He's mine. I am so close. So close, the woman shrieks. Her aura buckles like a wild thing. Strikes and blows rain upon my defenses as she has little care for defense. I focus on blocking and deflecting, managing to land a few wounds myself though they quickly heal. Eventually, they take their toll on her mind if not on her body, and she pulls back. We glare at each other. How did you even know? That it was you? I was not sure until I found your little hidey hole yesterday. You what? How? There were too many elements pointing at you. All 3 attacks happened either on or at the edge of your territory. They all took place in public places, not homes. They were the work of an independent agent, not someone aligned with one of the many mage factions dotting this political landscape. The most decisive clue, I think, was that you started all your fires in such a cautious yet inefficient fashion. We can approach fire rationally but, deep inside, we will always fear it, won't we? That's it. Suspicion. That was all you had, she sputters, furious. It was enough to follow you here. This construct I used does not point out to one of your victim's remains, but to a beacon I placed on the door behind you. And now, you fell into my trap. Mireille steps back, eyes darting to every corner of the room. The fear she shows is proof of an erratic behavior, and yet she does not feel like a rogue. I think I understand now. There is no trap. You lie. There is one, and you already sprung it. By attacking me. You see, killing the mages on your land remains your prerogative and I have no right to protest. You are not breaking the accords by doing so, therefore I have no right to interfere. She freezes as she realizes that she acted on instinct and the price thereof. Until you attacked me without provocation to cover your tracks, of course. Now, House Roland is in serious violation of our written agreement, a hospitality contract that I paid for. I smile. Our kind has a visceral reaction to our lairs being breached. I expected her to act as soon as she realized that she was made. What I did not expect was for her to accompany me here. My original plan was to wait for her outside of her mansion, then follow when she would inevitably come to erase the evidence of her actions. She might not be breaking the accords, but she certainly does not have Noel's authorization to slay his people on such a large scale. Like most successful plans, mine relied on accounting for many possibilities. Confronting me meant breaking the accords. Erasing the proofs meant that I would catch her red-handed and report her to Noel. Cutting and running would have solved my problems. Finally, turning the tables by using a scapegoat would have been countered by the many proofs I have collected and the oaths I could take. In every case, I can swear on my honor that I saw her sneak into the killer's hole and that she had the key. It would have been enough for a thorough interrogation. One last thing, my dear, I continue, most courtiers of sound mind would have realized that being in an enclosed space with a devourer is the trap. I don't. I am done listening. I must admit that playing the polite student for so long has been taxing on my patience. I have a right to unwind a bit on Mire since she has been quite naughty. Truly, no one could reasonably deny me this moment of cathartic relaxation. Still smiling, I grabbed the room's entire desk, claws dug deep, before swinging it around and into the charging courtier. Oof! The piece of furniture smacks her across the torso and propels her into the wall like a fancy pin. I grab the improvised disciplinary implement with both hands and swat it down with gusto. She will heal. You. Smack. Do not. Smack. Break. Smack. The rules. Smack. Of hospitality. Smack. With me. The desk breaks apart at the last strike. Mire crawls away, left leg shattered. Since I am not a complete animal, I seize her right foot to send her crashing into the far wall. Even with improved healing, broken bones take a while to set. Interestingly, Mire and I should be about the same age. We do not, however, share the same experience. No, wait. Please. I grab her by the wrist and arc her over my head, ending the pretty display of acrobatic dance in a crate of ceramic containers. They shatter on impact with a satisfying crunch. I feel better already. I allow the poor courtier to extract herself from the debris. She sits back down, hands raised. Where is the fae whose blood is in your vein? I demand. For a moment, Mire's face twists with an expression of the hottest rage. I do not punish her for it. She is not truly defying me, she just has difficulties letting go of her treasure. I can tolerate her taking a minute to bury her ambitions. There is a trap door upstairs, under the bed. Lift it and climb down. You will find him there. You harvested his essence. Yes. I always keep a container on me in case something like this happened. Not that it helped much. What were you trying to achieve? Did you think the potent blood would hasten your growth? It does not work as well for us as it does for devourers, but we can still grow faster with a constant supply of potent essence. Did you attack the mages for the same reason? Yes. There is only so much blood I can take from only one person. Then know that your belief is wrong. You are brittle. The power you gathered has no outlet and it will escape your grasp sooner or later. You took a great risk for little reward. Little reward, she scoffs, you are so far from the realities of our kind, devourer. It matters not to me what you have been through. The only thing I see is how you strut around town like you own it and be treated like an equal by the haughty lords and ladies of the land. I want to be strong and free, and pushing power into myself was very much worth the risk. Not if it breaks you, and eventually, it would have. Do you know why most devourers do not live past 20 years? This sentence stops her. Deep in her rational mind, she must be aware of the cost of power. My siblings are forced to consume too much, too fast, and it destroys them. Pa, enough of this. I am not here to convince you. Do you yield? This time, her hesitation provokes me. I grab by the neck and dig 2 claws in her tender flesh, bringing her face next to mine. I yield. I stop mid-hiss and force myself to relax. Spirit is one thing. Defiance when you are defeated is another. I yield. You win. I drop her unceremoniously. I want to see her prize now. The covered corridor leads to the upper floor you would expect in any hovel, a small bed, a cooking spot, a pantry. I lift the wooden frame to reveal the passage beneath. A few steps dug into the rock lead to a sort of cave lit by a single lantern. At the bottom of the stairs, I find a Lycian boy, a cot, a stained bucket and a single lantern letting out a pathetic glow. The frail youth cradles the source of light like a drowning man a buoy, and I cannot help but feel a deep resentment towards Mire, whom I left mostly intact on the floor. This is not our way. We defang our foes by turning them into cattle, or we kill them, or we come to an agreement. Only personal vengeance should justify that horrid treatment. Not greed. Never greed. She should not have drained him like a leech, night after night to grow stronger. We are not leeches. We are hunters. The boy has very dark hair and abyssal eyes, showing just one little star of interest as he spots me. But soon, the realization of what I am turns hope into despair. A single heavy sigh shakes his skeletal frame and his gaze turns back to the glimmer cradled in his filthy hands. I approach slowly and kneel by his side. But I do not speak. Because I now realize my predicament. I want the kid to be free. My friendship with Sinead has changed my outlook on liberty, and Nami's presence has only served to reinforce this impression. I am not some champion of light. I merely believe that mortals and other creatures shine the most when they can be themselves, and it is at their brightest that they are the most delicious. Ethics and gastronomy rolled in one ideal, freedom. Truly, I am a benevolent being. But I cannot save this one. If I bring Mire to Noel and take the Lycian for myself, she could share his existence with her clan as revenge or in the hope of lessening her punishment. If I kill Mire, I will likely be found out and at the very least be banished, my captive taken as reparation. The repercussions of this decision could hurt me diplomatically for decades to come. No matter what, I will condemn this child to slavery. I stare at the tiny being. He still ignores my presence. I must kill him. This is the only salvation I can grant. It feels wrong. My inner rules forbid me from killing a child, though would that not be mercy in this case? Sometimes, death is preferable to the alternative. Especially for one as young-looking as this one. He is already broken. Sometimes, I must break rules in order to. Oh. I am a complete idiot, am I not? When we are faced with contradictory rules and promises, we keep those we deem the most important. I step away from the kid and climb back up, then walk down the covered stairs down to the room where I left Mire. I smile at her pleasantly, and she looks more terrified at my expression than when I had my claws at her throat. You can give the child to me willingly, stop your killings and pursue power through training and study. If you do that, I will forget the whole debacle and we can both go on our merry way. That is the first option. I step closer until the symbolism of my standing form above hers leaves no room to interpretation. In the heart of Constantine's fortress hides a master by the name of Ignace. My ransom for breaking the accords and attacking me despite our treaty will be 3 days in his care. I am convinced that your house will be more than happy to throw you to the wolves for what you have done. Ignace will undress you and bind you to a chair, then, together, you will explore the meaning of pain. You will learn to recognize every organ in your body and every strand of muscle as he removes them with surgical precision. He will peel off the skin from flesh inch by inch until you beg him to die. Enough. I know of Ignace. Then realize that this is your second choice. She looks at me with narrowed eyes. I could inform Noelle and Lady Berenice of your proposal. And I would receive at most a slap on the wrist. I am not working against them by trying to keep that fay for myself. I am not technically breaking the terms of our agreement. You, however. Yes, I get it. What do you propose? I am sure we can agree to a carefully worded treaty. It takes us only 10 minutes to reach a compromise. By the time we are done, Mireille has seemingly accepted that the child was lost to her in any case and that it would be better to avoid punishment. I keep an option open to add terms after consulting with Salim, in case she finds a loophole, in exchange for no additional reparations. All in all, I think I covered myself well. When I step down from the ladder, he completely ignores me until I start speaking. The Lycian language comes slowly and haltingly. I have to think hard to get the right inflection and I am limited by my lack of information. Should I use the official vocabulary of declamation? Or a more polite greeting between unknown parties? Or should I assume that my rescue is as young as he looks and try for a more familiar tone to comfort him? In the end, I use the most neutral tone I can because I want to avoid mistakes. Slowly, the desperate mask of the boy melts to reveal the pain underneath. Tears flow from his eyes in great droplets as he grabs my arms with surprising strength and lets out a panicked babble. His voice is young and musical though made raspy by dehydration. I let him talk, too fast for me to understand, until he stops to catch his breath. It gave me the time to prepare an answer. I apologize, young sir, my words are that of a child. You must speak slowly. Lycian is as infinitely complex as it is versatile. Young sir refers to a noble son of unknown origin. Child indicates that I have issues associating sounds with meaning. Sinead's book mentions that the most powerful sovereigns can create gardens and charnel pits by declaiming poetry. The child slows down and his eyes aim up, to freedom. I silently hoist him over my shoulder and flinch at the stench of his unwashed body. The trip up is short, and he soon stands outside the main door, looking up the cloud-covered sky. I use dry wood and a bit more terebinthine than is wise to start a fire and haul him back in as soon as he gets the shivers. Snow and an iron basin are enough for an improvised bath. I wash his hair while he shoves syrupy apples down his throat with wild abandon. What about my captor? The boy asks after he is clean, dressed in clean clothes, and filled with enough sugar to start his own distillery. His voice is slow and measured, and just a bit condescending. Lycian is the same language across their many worlds and those who cannot learn it are not held in high regard. He does not understand yet that our reality is different. I defeated her. I will bring you to my honored friend, Prince Sinead of the Court of Summer. It grates a bit to use such a highly polite term for such a licentious scoundrel, but apparently it was the right thing to do because he looks at me with renewed wonder. Oh. Apologies. My name is Macabre of the Court of Wings and Keyholes. I must have misunderstood that one. Wings and keyholes. I repeat. Those are unusual words. Perhaps I am mistaking them. Wings, the boy patiently whispers and I hear a fleeting sound of a dove taking flight, and keyholes, he continues as I perceive the word not as a passage but as a leaky thing, a flaw from which secrets escape. The tiny court. I am pleased to meet you, Macabre of the air, Court of Wings and Keyholes. No. I am pleased. In your debt now. I am almost certain that this Lycian is quite young. Younger than most, in any case. I need to contact Sinead because I am disinclined to act as a nursemaid. Right. I will protect you for now. It will take a few days before help arrives and we can take you to a safer place. Yay. I am in your care. Can you sing? This question is taboo. So, no. Maybe I should just drain him a bit, as payment. Sinead comes in person to recover his newest ally and I realize a few interesting details. First, Machias of the Court of Wings and Keyholes is slightly more intimidating than I gave him credit for, if Sinead's reaction is to be believed. Second, Machias is obviously not a bashful child. He drops the act as soon as he finds himself in the presence of a prince, and I get a glimpse of the playful malice beneath. Sinead also uses the opportunity to flirt outrageously. I should have expected it. I also learn that the Lycians are busy working on a way back and, apparently, the space magic developed by Ricardo in Alexandria is the key. Sevilla is confident that she will finish a valid spell by the end of the century. When I remark that it is a long time, I am informed that creating an entirely new branch of magic in a rigid reality is a time-consuming effort and that I am welcome to try myself. Sinead's condescending delivery is truly without a match. In any case, I foresee more shenanigans in the future and let them go on their way. Over the next few months, I managed to keep up my magical studies with the mortals through immense effort and the occasional application of blood magic when some spells become too complex. No matter how hard I try, my fire spells remain pallid and pathetic, and my light spells are timid things, bright enough to be seen from afar but never seeming to give the mortals any visibility. On the contrary, anything related to blood, shadows and illusions comes to me naturally. I get no more issue from Mireille or any of the local Roland vampires afterward, though I do continue sword practice. I eventually come to enjoy it, relishing the flexibility that swords can offer. On the home front, I have to handle a slew of issues, from the care of Sinead's illegitimate children to the growth of the slave-catcher population moving north from Kentucky. My dream mage also marries a cake maker to no one's surprise. With the rescued children and the White Cabal's presence, Marquette's mage population explodes. Strangely, the werewolf population explodes as well, even if they cannot bear children. Every time I pass by, there are more of them following me around with their nose in the air, only keeping a respectful distance because of Métis' fearsome reputation as an ear thief. Any attempt to wiggle the whole truth from Geoffrey ends in a 2 hours declaration involving his cousins, nephews, friends from the coast, the Illuminati, that fisherwoman from Ottawa with the thick thighs. As far as I understand, their village's fame has grown as the safest and richest werewolf haven, and it attracts a lot of those who would not do so well in traditional pack structures. I understand that many of those prefer to be left alone, and that the new town, amusingly named Moonside, affords them the tranquility they crave. Geoffrey assures me that they will fight when called, and that is, in the end, all that I care about. I still wish they would stop trying to smell me. I find it extremely vexing. Last but not least, I use the opportunity of a payment for a protection detail to ask for blood from Selim of the Rosenthal, which he secretly accepts. Their essence is certainly one of the most useful I have ever consumed. I can now recall things much more easily if I focus on them, and some tedious tasks like reading reports become significantly more relaxing. I complete them as if in a trance. Making paperwork less tedious is without a doubt one of the mightiest powers in creation. Unfortunately, better memories only make the following ordeal that much more painful. I knew this day would come. I knew it from the beginning, but I always managed to push the thought to the back of my mind. I had so much to do. There were always new foes to fight and problems to solve, things to learn. Now it has come and I am at a loss. I bump my head against Torin's chest in a rare display of public affection. Others might see, but I care little. I breathe in deep, and the cold spice of him overwhelms the brine on the air to both soothe me and distress me even more. His hand pats the back of my head. We do not speak. We are beyond words. Everything that was worth saying was said a long time ago. The fact remains that I have my life here and he has his own back in Hungary. There is no bridging that gap, not when it takes months of travel between our territories. A dvor can only stay so long away from his fief, after all. Torin will bring his fledgling back with him, and that is it. I feel a strong mix of emotions now, not enough to cry but enough that it feels good. I am alive now because of what we shared and must now leave behind. The bittersweet emotion dulls the throb of undirected anger threatening to overwhelm me. There is simply no one I can gut, stab, set on fire or detonate to keep him around, and I find that extremely aggravating. The pier around us is silent, despite sailors loading the last of the goods and supplies they will carry over the Atlantic. No one interrupts us, but still, I let him go. I am delaying the inevitable. I release you from our bond, my star, Torrin finally says, his face showing no emotion. I release you from our bond, I answer, finishing the ritual. It hurts as much as I expected. I can appreciate that we will not see each other for years, possibly decades, and that it would be unfair of me to expect celibacy from him in the off case that I might come back. I still feel robbed. I do not want to share. If I come to visit and find some tart hanging about, I might just do something unfortunate. I warned him it would be the case, therefore the responsibility of any future dismemberments will be placed solely at his feet. I leave the pier behind and walk round a warehouse. The city is mostly silent at this time of the night. I stop and lean against some stupid door. I wait for some time. It doesn't get better. Someone comes, a familiar aura. Sister, Jimena answers with a soft voice. She is dressed in a form-fitting leather armor, not in night garb, for once. She drops a heavy-looking backpack and takes from it a case, which she gives me. I unpack it to reveal a weapon. A pistol, to be precise. Never have I witnessed its like. It is the work of a mad genius, nay, a revolutionary. I caress the smooth, silvery surface and ask with unmitigated wonder. What is this thing? A prototype based on the design of a weapon dealer by the name of Colt. It can shoot 6 times before being reloaded. They are not even producing it yet. The cartridges go into that barrel over here. Marvelous. So, there is a group of outlaws who just robbed a Rosenthal carriage outside of town. Would you like to go kill them and get paid? This time, the emotion is too strong and a single ruby pearl drops down my cheek. Jimena, you are the best sister I could ever ask for. The smug woman catches the tear before it can drop and raises it to her lips, licking it after I give her leave. Of course I am. I know you well and this is what you need. Now go and test this barbaric tool of yours. Heathen. At a corner of an empty road, beyond an overgrown path and the moss-covered room of a hunter rest, a few men have set up camp. They dug a pit and lit a fire there, counting on the remoteness and the wild vegetation to hide the smoke from inquisitive eyes. It was, of course, not enough. The sentinel is the first to notice me strutting forth with my fancy dress, my coat and the undeniably imposing leather tricorn which is totally appropriate and I would dare anyone to object. The man squints at my approaching figure. His beady eyes widen in surprise as I enter the light halo of his dusty lantern. He stinks of alcohol. Language, mongrel. I tut loudly, a gesture of intimidation that is known to make mortals cry, if they know what is good for them. I am the law around these parts. You and your little friends have been very, very naughty. I'll only be happy when you hang from the neck until dead, rascal. The sentinel takes the affected smile of someone who is convinced his interlocutor suffers from severe delusion and who is 10 seconds away from beating some sense into them. He shifts his coat aside to grab and take out a knife. I mirror his gesture with one small difference, one he realizes as soon as he ends up face to maw with the business end of the 6-shooter. It will always fascinate me how some objects are clearly weapons. My pistol might be a prototype, but there is no mistaking the keen line and metallic gleam. This is a tool of death. What the hell? Hands in the air and you might just live to see the day. I am the hand of the law and my reach is long indeed. Somewhere behind me, a bush swears in Akkad and lets out a muffled laugh. Shit. Everyone. Help. A madwoman. You won't escape your punishment, miscreant. I yell in my loudest human voice as if I were as self-righteous as a Gabrielite. I lightly jog after the fleeing man until we arrive at his camp. She's right behind me. Shoot her, shoot her. A man fires a musket and the bullet misses me completely. What is he even aiming at? And now he is just standing here like a moron, gaping at the shadows. I shoot him in the chest. He falls with a dreadful shriek and the rest of his band finally realizes that they are under attack. They pile on behind crates of supplies and fire back. I skip behind a thick trunk and take potshots at those who break cover, making no particular effort to aim. I have plenty of bullets in a bag and this is the time to experiment. It can't be just the one, there are too many bullets flying. She must have help, one of the men says in a panicked voice. Shut your mug. Your sins are many. I shout with a gravelly voice, and you should all repent. Repent. Ha, I can see why the Gabrielite would risk dismemberment. This is fun. I leave the cover of the trunk and empty all 6 bullets in my left gun in quick succession. She's got this strange gun. Do you think that's why? Then it must be empty. Let's rush her, a brave soul screams and then jumps on top of the crate. I shoot the man down with the right gun like the dog he is. I then open the contraption to reload. Instead of doing it cartridge by cartridge, I just remove the entire barrel and replace it with a fresh one. This is such a revolutionary invention. I am witnessing history in the making. Nushi shot Jerry. Jerry. Let me die, fools. Run. Run for your lives. How very dramatic. It reminds me, I should buy an opera ticket for The Queen of the Night by Mozart. An opera in German. I will go alone, have the waiters bring me a cup of coffee and throw chocolate wrappings on the heads of the rich folks below. It will be grand. Or I could bring Nami and enjoy the outrage. A bullet hits the trunks fairly close to my head, showering me with splinters. Right. I am already in the middle of something fun. Carpe diem and all that. I lean to the side and shoot at the ass of someone attempting to crawl away. He howls and his friends drag him back. There are only 3 of them now, including one who is no longer so cheeky. Heh. I turn once more and, this time, flick the hammer with one hand while I press the trigger with the other. This allows me to shoot faster but I am still limited by the physics of the gun itself. Otherwise I could shoot even faster. Incredible. Could I make an overly large version of this? We surrender. What really? Already? I scream in utter annoyance. My legitimate question is received in stupefied silence. Jimena walks to me with a chuckle as I vociferate and grumble. Why? How can they be such cowards? They are bandits, Ariane, not fanatics dying for a cause. But I killed bandits before and they hardly ever surrendered. Well. Or did you just enter the fray and happily slaughtered them? Ariane. It is not fair. There are so many wastes of space already here, why can't they go and he can stay? I finish sulkily. Jimena remains silent. She reaches up to lightly tap the top of my head. Because it is Jimena, I let her. A male voice says from behind, can we please lower our hands or? Torin's departure leaves me irritable and ill-tempered for a few months during which I take a more hands-off attitude to ruling Marquette and my budding business empire. Following Salim's advice, I also invest in the real estate of my territory, apparently a vampire tradition. I sink my time and undirected anger into magical and physical training with the occasional help of a few warm-minded masters like Nami and Jimena. I also try to involve guns in my combat style but soon realize that the task is extremely arduous and that my training partners object to being shot at mid-practice. I will have to return to that at a later date. The year 1836 brings an interesting event in the Natalie's territory. Texans conduct a revolution and manage to capture the Mexican general Santa Anna, forcibly bringing him to the negotiation table and leading to the birth of the Republic of Texas. Lord Jarek's territory is no longer part of Mexico as a result. The new state of Arkansas joins the Union, giving us a new, clearly delimited territory, which is granted to the returning Lancaster. Lord Marion is their new leader and he takes the time to come and greet me, bearing offerings and a juicy trade agreement that finally allows me to set up a proper gun factory. Because of this and his overall politeness, I support his claim even though deep inside I am fuming. A few diplomatic agreements and he obtains a state. Pah! Back in my days, you had to wallow knee-deep in werewolf blood to get a tiny piece of land. Those newcomers do not know how good they have it. The entry of Arkansas brings forth a burning issue, that of slavery. The growth of the abolitionist movement leads to massive frictions and each new state that enters the Union threatens the fragile equilibrium between the two sides. For now, Illinois is not a slave state but there are slave catchers operating on the southern border while in the north, abolitionists assist fugitives on their way to Canada. Although I stick to my belief that a happy human is a tasty human and that no man, or woman, can truly be happy as long as they do not have free agency, I limit my actions to keeping the less honest catchers off my area of control through heavy beatings whenever necessary. At least 3 different clans have a vested interest in the institution, including the Cotties whose financial interests are closely tied to the South and its plantations. Vampire kind is thus equally split on the subject. The Econ, Roland and I are firmly in the abolitionist camp with Sepher herself calling it odious, while the others argue that treating people as property is as old as history itself and therefore natural, if unfortunate. I do not see this ending well. In the meanwhile, I continue learning from Ezekiel until, in the month of January 1837, Margaret disappears. The compass definitely points to the factory in front of me, showing me that the girl still lives. The building is decently new and obviously busy during daytime. The paint of the massive double gate is fresh and the many windows clearly show a neat interior. That is not what I expected, Ezekiel says. Without his ridiculous red robes, he looks more like an actual professor and less like some cheap, farcical villain. His keen eyes fix the brick surface of his target as if they could bore right through it. I know what he means. Margaret has gone missing and she has ways of contacting us. I am going for kidnapping, mundane or otherwise. Let me infiltrate the place, just in case, I request. To my surprise, Ezekiel does not argue. Agreed, but be warned that after 5 minutes I shall break in gauntlet blazing. If you find some crime afoot, this is your window to reach a diplomatic agreement. After that. Ezekiel's vehemence does not surprise me. The man is surprisingly protective of his pupils, a habit I can respect. I leave without a word and crawl up the wall with the grace and expertise of the consummate cat burglar. This is not my first breaking and entering. I find an improperly latched window and open it with minimal noise and damage, then suddenly hear a gasp. We are in the factory district and the place is mostly empty at this time, so I expected no company. Cursing my carelessness, I turn around to find a very drunk man holding a half-empty bottle of gin staring at me with bulging eyes. I must strike a dashing figure, stuck like a lizard to the sheer wall in my conservative grey dress. Fortunately, the man has given me the very tool to defuse the situation. I wave at him with a manic smile, then move into the building. I hear a curse, then the brittle noise of shattered glass followed in turn by barely coherent screams about she-devils and absinthe and whatnot. Crisis averted. The clock is still ticking however, and I quickly make my way outside of what appears to be an accounting department and down 2 sets of stairs. I realize on the ground floor that the door to outside is warded, and that it looks like professional work. I sigh and kneel to fix my dress to my leggings so that it does not trail everywhere, then I lightly jump up and crawl across the ceiling like the world's prettiest bat. People never look up. He is also wearing a white cabal battle dress. My unexpected opponent is very young, although a bushy dark beard would lead people to think otherwise. He is not exactly inattentive either and I salute his discipline. In fact, his appearance reminds me of. No way. Cedric? I ask in surprise, recognizing one of the students I had enjoyed terrifying, one of the students I had generously prepared for the vagaries of the life of a combat mage by direct request of his chief instructor. The man jumps in fright and lets out a rather girly scream, then he looks up as his shield activates. His frown turns to an expression of pure delight, then morphs to a mask of aloof confidence. He leans against a railing, twirling his mustache. "Oh, Ariane of the Nirari, fancy seeing you here." "Cedric, is everything all right?" a voice comes from below. "We have a guest, people." Cedric declaims proudly as I drop from the ceiling and smooth my dress. We almost look the same age now. I do not believe I will ever get used to this. Before testing this team, Jonathan had warned me that they were perhaps the most talented group Avalon had ever produced and therefore fully expected them to fail spectacularly, which they did. Their arrogance and recklessness caused their loss despite some rather impressive individual displays of skill. I see that this lesson was not lost on them when 3 people climb up the stairs slowly and in tight formation. I recognize the man in the front as the leader, Reginald. He holds the shield, while behind him, the 2 ladies of the group cover him. The first is a dark-haired girl with brown eyes and a magnetic charm, Mina. Her gauntlet practically shines with power begging to be unleashed. The second is an aristocratic young woman with blue eyes and blonde hair, holding a silver sword at the ready. They all stop when they see me, but to their credit, they do not lower their guard. "Oh. Hello," Reginald says with a slightly shameful expression. Our last interaction was indeed quite the humiliation for the fearless leader. I notice that the last member of the team is missing. Is Will circling around to attack me from behind? I ask, until I focus on my aura control and realize that the sneakier member of their coterie is, in fact, right around the corner behind his allies. Ah, no, he is right here. Now, let me ask the fateful question to get it out of the way. Do you happen to have in your custody a young female warlock with dark hair, pale skin and a chip on her shoulder the size of Bunker Hill? Would she have a tendency to say things such as, "Behold my dark power, and you cannot comprehend my might"? I sigh. Unfortunately, yes. Yeah, we have her, she's downstairs. Unhurt. Apprentices of the dark arts are always so full of themselves, Cedric explains, pleased. Yes, Cedric, pompous fools the lot of them. They always need some harrowing experience to remind them of where they stand on the food chain, I remark, pointedly. Cedric has the grace to blush while Reggie and his 2 flankers close the distance. The shields are still up, I notice. Will steps out into the open with an embarrassed smile. Would you consider releasing her into my care? I politely ask in a way that merely hints at the fact that this is not a request rather than heavily imply it. Of course, it's not like she's the one we're looking for, don't you think so, guys? Cedric states as he turns to his friends with a winning smile. They remain unamused. I think that you talk too much, the blonde woman retorts with a freezing voice that carries just a bit of German. Her name is Carmela if I remember correctly. Stop trying to flirt with the immortal mage-eater Cedric, she already told you you were too young and that beard changed nothing, Mina adds with genuine concern. Nonsense, Cedric scoffs as he turns a delicate shade of tulip, I did not grow it to look more mature and impress her. A very, very awkward silence spreads across the assembly. The shield mage pales as he realizes that his blabbering has become his downfall. Really? I had found the timing suspicious, of course, but to think, Carmela observes. Gee, Cedric, you wax your mustache for that? Reginald adds with disgust. I clap my hands once to garner their attention and stop, nay, postpone the merciless hazing. Please focus for one moment. Can I recover the witch? If you guarantee us protection from her retribution, such as it is, we will gladly give her to you, Reginald quickly answers. It is done then. Please wait a moment while I inform my associate. Everyone smiles pleasantly as we wind down our spells, including my own blood magic shield piercer. Allied, yes. Stupid, no. I return to a fitful Ezekiel and inform him that I reached an agreement with the kidnappers and that they are not, in fact, kidnappers, but merely allies of mine who defended themselves. I can see the doubts in his eyes, though he is smart enough not to voice them. To call a vampire a liar is a painfully vain exercise. Tear trails line her cheeks, the poor arrogant thing. I detach her and she stands up, massaging her wrists to help with the blood flow and trying her best to melt into the wall. Perhaps there is a spell for that. So, I have a standing argument with one of the lads back in Avalon. He says that vampires and mages are natural enemies while I say that it's vampires and werewolves. What do you think? Cedric asks me excitedly. I think you are both mistaken, I reply sweetly. From our perspective, you are all prey. A distinct chill freezes everyone in the room. William, who stands close, takes an instinctual step back. All but Cedric. That makes sense, he comments as if I had shared a great pearl of wisdom. In a way, I have. He just did not get it. Cedric caresses his lush beard, staring at the ceiling with a penetrating gaze as if it held the secrets of the universe in its dusty recess. Anyway, Will continues with an embarrassed glare, I now understand why we have been deployed here. The environment is sufficiently challenging while we have an ally who can potentially come to the rescue. The black dog thought of everything. Speaking of allies, would you consider assisting us? Mina asks politely. I notice that both Will and Reginald give her their full attention as she makes her plea. There is a longing in their gaze that I easily recognize. We are looking for a ring of human traffickers who sometimes manage to intercept refugee mages as they get off the boat. Despicable people. We are here to dismantle their local branch and prevent them from preying on the weak, she boasts with undisguised pride. Will steps forward, the first to realize that asking me to act out of the kindness of my heart is a doomed prospect. We were given special shaped charges by Jonathan. They are designed to direct the blast in one direction only, thus sparing the people and materials engulfed in a normal powder blast's area of effect. Perhaps you would consent to come with us and operate them yourself. Oh, the crafty lad. Does he think I am the kind of woman who would assault an unknown foe for the chance of understanding a prototype explosive? Because he would be absolutely correct, but I cannot have him win so easily. It would set a dangerous precedent. That sounds fascinating. Good luck with that, I inform a slightly crestfallen William. We would compensate you for your time, of course, Reginald adds in a respectful voice. Yeah. I volunteer my blood. Are you thirsty? Not now, Cedric. Ariane of the Nirari, our foe uses magic to hide themselves that renders the most standard tracking spells useless. We believe that this is extremely potent magic and one of our secondary objectives is to recover it. I believe that I can negotiate for not only access to this spell but also our help in mastering it, should you join us, Reginald continues. I do not need a way to hide thanks to Neshoba's earrings. It could still be extremely useful to mask allies or even understand how to find somebody. Deal. Now show me those shaped charges you mentioned. As the night progresses and we work together, I realize that I do not mind keeping an eye on the team. They are pleasantly competent and getting to know them and be known and relied on in return improves the chances that Jonathan's alliance lasts for more than one generation. We eventually find the kidnappers and even get the help of both Ezekiel and Salazar as well as a few local mages. Peace soon returns to the city and I get a new blueprint for my trouble. I spend the next 4 years alternating between Philadelphia and my own territory, stopping my studies only long enough to handle the odd crisis that my competent underlings cannot easily handle. Merritt eventually remarries too and hires several associates, which I allow after vetting them and just a little bit of intimidation to make sure they understand that I will not tolerate duplicity. Urchin develops into a fine enforcer to my pleasant surprise. He develops his own fighting style which revolves around pulling objects out of seemingly nowhere and shoving them in someone's back, or shooting them in the face with one of the many tiny pistols he had specially made. Marquette develops relatively quickly while Chicago expands at a vertiginous speed with a little help from Melusine's peerless business acumen, allowing the both of us to consolidate our positions. I do not object when she recovers a few Lancaster exiles and even negotiates with Lord Marion to make sure there is no resentment left. Slowly, political blocks form around the Cotties on one side and the Roland on the other, with a third force made from us weaker clans. The occurrence of issues and decisions that must be taken collectively continues to increase, leading us to today. I look down at Lady Saphir's intricate golden curls as she climbs down the stairs before me. We proceed by pair, the state leader and their second side by side with Constantine leading the way. I chose Melusine, not that there was much competition. Servants, soldiers and employees stick to the walls of the fortress' cozy interior and watch us pass with a bit of awe, as is suitable. We have enough political and physical power here to overthrow a small nation. The corridor widens and we soon tread a crimson carpet to a set of double doors guarded on each side by Constantine's bodyguards, acting as mysterious as ever. Our combined auras, though peaceful, have a curious effect on our surroundings. We are not mingling with mortals this time, we are walking together with a purpose, and a queer feeling of harmonization changes the texture of reality ever so slightly. It tastes thinner. I wonder if the others feel it too. The gates open for Constantine and we follow him into a large circular room wide enough to contain a cottage. Sophia, Constantine's assistant, is already sitting behind a large writing desk at the far end. The floor at the center of the room is made from concentric rings of stone. As we approach, the speaker lifts a gauntlet hand and 17 slide up, one by one, with barely a noise. I count one for each pair of representatives and one for him. Finally, stone thrones rise up from the 19th ring to accommodate us. We pretend not to be impressed while Constantine feigns indifference at our lack of reaction. Lesser minds may gasp and whisper at such a mighty display, but I know better. In a few hours, the attendants will realize that naked stone makes for a poor cushion. Not everyone benefits from my, padding. We take our places in silence. The massive central table is split like a pie by minor light magic so that each present state is clearly shown by its flag when applicable, and its name in large, blocky letters. Right now they are all grayed out. Only the speaker's pie slice is lit in light red. He stands up to address us. Welcome to the First Pan-American Council of Princes. The purpose of this reunion is to align and decide on major events. As previously stated, we will take decisions by vote at the end of a debate with me acting as arbitrator. You will notice that my side of the table is lit while the others are grayed out. When someone has the floor, their side will, in turn, be lit. If you do not have the floor, you should refrain from interrupting. Disruptive behavior will be punished. As if we would act like rowdy children. The first order of business tonight is the issue of slavery. With the recent ruling on the Amistad affair and the continuous clashes between abolitionists and their opponents, I have deemed it necessary that we establish guidelines all houses should follow. Immediately, the atmosphere grows heavy. Kuku and Naminata in particular fix Siren and a few others with barely disguised hostility. They wear their traditional red and yellow babus with disdainful pride, the bright colors offering a stark contrast with the drabber outfits worn by their rivals. Several members of this assembly volunteered actionable plans. We will listen to their proposals and discuss their merits. House Econ, you have the floor. Thank you, Speaker, Lord Kuku replies in a smooth bass. He stabs a talon in the flesh of his thumb, then places the pearl of dark blood on the stone surface. A few runes flare and a map of North America appears on the table. The next hour is spent in controlled arguments. We remain polite at all times and discussions do not heat up because most of the negotiations already happened behind closed doors. This is mostly a show of strength and of eloquence. The econ argue that each state leader should decide who to favor on their own territory, leaving them free to act as they see fit. In the case of the econ, that means facilitating escapes and freely financing groups such as the Underground Railroad. The Qadis retort by claiming that slaves can be regarded as house assets, as such their recovery should be allowed across all territories. They add that abetting escapes is technically theft and that any house engaged in such activities should be considered hostile according to the Accords. At this stage, the fanged smiles strain noticeably. The econ predictably counter with the observation that, as soon as the fugitives reach a state where slavery is illegal, they have the right of ownership over themselves and could not be reacquired without breaking the laws of said state. Any attempt to recapture slaves would be poaching, still according to the Accords. The arguments go back and forth for almost an hour before Lady Sepher asks to intervene. She makes a reasonable and impassioned speech about the dangers of giving access to one's territory, and while the practice of slavery was an ancient tradition, the right of every vampire to protect their territory from outside influence should supersede it. An escaped prisoner must be considered lost, and that is that. Her case is backed by every state leader who does not want foreign agents freely roaming their territory, including myself. The slavers among us will have to keep an eye on their merchandise themselves. We win that vote with a comfortable majority. As Constantine announces the result and Sophia writes it down for posterity, I consider that it merely pushes the conflict back to unofficial support and funding of various groups. Nothing is truly solved yet. The second order of business is land control. The Union recently gained the states of Arkansas and Michigan, while the Republic of Texas was formed from Santa Anna's blunder. At the same time, the Roland have expanded into Quebec. The question is whether to intervene into mortal affairs and steer the formation of borders in a certain way. This discussion is much more consensual, and we quickly agree to leave them to their own devices. We would only intervene by mutual agreement and if we consider our interests at risk. Once all agreements are made, Constantine calls an end to the proceedings and we file out in silence. We climb back up to the fortress living quarters and split up without comments. As soon as we are all dispersed, Melusine and I do not have the time to reflect before we receive an invitation to visit the econ quarters. With this, the diplomatic dance begins anew. Over the next 5 years I focus on my spellcasting and even start to experiment with complex rituals and my sire spells. They are nasty things of power and rage, efficient and refined yet inelegant. There is a spell that uses blades following randomized movement, one that sets up invisible caltrops of deleterious energy, one that is specialized in flaying its target alive. I still study them all and realize that Eerie truly is talented, even though he relies more on power than on subtlety. 10 years have come and gone when suddenly, I find a letter waiting for me on my desk back in Marquette. This one bears the mark of the Rosenthal Postal Service and I freeze as I recognize a familiar cursive. I delicately pick its creamy surface and slide it closer, my eyes widening in disbelief. I had not seen this specific handwriting in decades. It could not be. I flipped the envelope and read the name of the sender with ever-increasing surprise. It is April 1846. My feet tread the familiar ground in silence, and I bounce up the 3 small stairs to the entrance with the ease of familiarity. They have not changed. Neither have I. The door could use another coat of paint though. I pull on a cord. Light chimes sound from inside and a pair of heavy steps heralds the coming of the house staff. We are late enough that a visit would be considered rude, but not enough that I would be greeted with a musket. I do not recognize the woman who opens the door. She wears a conservative light dress and a scowl as she squints, trying to recognize me. I am here to see Achille Raynaud, I announce. And what business do you have with Mr. Raynaud? He called me here. Her inspection is done and she clearly does not like what she sees. Some people have good instincts and I cannot help but smile. I am experiencing something new, nostalgia. I have not been home in so long. Mr. Raynaud is indisposed. I know. Then you should also know better than to come so late. Return tomorrow. She goes to close the door and shows quite a bit of surprise when I press a hand against the heavy frame, pushing her aside with ease. Her expression turns scandalized. Madam, I will ask you to leave. Immediately. I take a deep breath to appreciate the moment, tasting the air. I am still welcome. The old magic has left me untouched. I step forward. Fortunately, you are not my host. I do not need your agreement. I lightly push her protesting form aside and climb up the stairs, ignoring her pathetic invectives. My brother will rest in the master bedroom, and this is where my steps lead me. The house smells of incense, sickness, old furniture, and old people. Girders and support beams creak like the knees of a crone all around, and the ticks of an ancient clock thrum like heartbeats. Still, this place lives, more solemn than decrepit. The pitted planks are lacquered while the shelves sag under the weight of well-ordered books and polished trinkets. Some of them even look quite expensive. I finally reach the fateful door. When I was a child, this was my father's domain. He would tolerate my presence there while he accepted no one else, not since mother had died. I would charge in to wake him up sometimes, jumping on the mattress and bumping my head against his as if I were a ram. He is long gone, and so is his scent. I knock lightly on the door and enter. Most of the furniture must have been replaced at some point. Only the bed itself occupies the same space. In it lies the prone form of my brother. The years have not been kind. I suppose that he is old now at 64. Age does not explain the sunken cheek, the stringy beard, or the yellow skin stuck to his skeletal body. Sickness does. His breath comes out raspy and difficult. A desiccated hand grabs at his torso and the probable source of his pain even as he fitfully sleeps. The air is heavy with the smell of medicine. I step closer and find a comfortable chair. I am confident that I was quiet, and yet just as I finish sitting, he pops his eyes open and turns them on me with unerring purpose. They are bloodshot and just as keen and blue as I remember them. His gaze turns to the table at his side, and I understand the unspoken request. I stand again and light a few candles before returning to his side. We scrutinize each other in silence. His jaw shifts several times as, I assume, he struggles to find words that he perhaps prepared. I know better and did not even attempt the foolish exercise. You have not changed at all. Are you still you? He finally asks, his voice grating from an exhausted throat. I'm afraid that is up for debate, and I wish I could return the compliment. For a moment, the barb throws us back to a time when our conflicted relationship shaped the lives and ears of many a nurse. We both smile at those memories and something clicks between us, a fleeting sense of camaraderie. When Akil next speaks, his voice is softer. Thank you for coming. I wish it had been sooner, but I had a few things to work through. When did you learn that I was still, for lack of a better term, alive? Father told me before he passed away. Achilles' eyes grow distant. It took me a long time to accept what he said as more than the delusions of a sick man, and even longer to act. I apologize. No need, Akil. Yes, need, he retorts. He painfully shifts in his bed and grabs an envelope from his bedside table. The paper is wrinkled and faded by old age, and when he hands it to me, I feel a weight inside. His skin is dry and feverish. Father left this for you. There is a key inside. I did not want to give it to a monster. It took a lot of growing up to realize that it was not my decision to take. Self-reflection. Who are you and what have you done with my brother? I retort teasingly as I accept the gift. Achilles' answering smile is brittle and bittersweet. You laugh. I spent entirely too much time growing a business and a family before realizing I had to grow as a person as well. A lot of events happening late in my life have changed my outlook. I had many certitudes. Now, much less so. Je suis surprise, I admit, temporarily reverting to French. Do not be, petite sir, it is never too late to change. Our moment is interrupted by heavy steps trampling the floor on their way to the bedroom. I recognize the decisive struts, quick breath and dancing heartbeat of a terrified human desperately trying to rally their spirits. The door bangs open and a woman crashes in, head high and armed with an iron poker. A strange sensation of uncanny otherness overcomes me and I grip the couch, fangs almost bared in an instinctive response. It takes all of my self-control to shut my mouth and force myself to relax. She is not me. This was just an illusion, a phantom born from decades spent away from my own blood. She is not me. Who are you? She asks with a trembling voice. My guest, Akil interrupts before I can reply. I let him. Host privilege. Grand Père, the doctor said that you should rest, especially at night. I know, ma petite. This meeting could not wait. Grand Père. Please, you have to take care of yourself. Mademoiselle, can you not come back tomorrow morning? She asks, turning to me. June, listen to me, Akil speaks in a kind voice that I do not recognize. My brother has changed a lot. The Akil I knew could not tolerate objections or refusals. He had a very firm idea of his place in the world and everyone else's too. Those who opposed his orders while being his inferior were severely reprimanded and their objections immediately dismissed as the ramblings of an inferior getting out of line and, therefore, unwise. This Akil is reasonable and patient. June, my dear. You know that some things cannot wait. Please. Tears purl at the corner of the girl's eyelids. She furiously tries to chase them away by blinking very fast and scowling mightily before turning away and stomping back into the corridor where she stays to eavesdrop with all the spying acumen of a 5 years old. You have mellowed in your old age, I remark, not unkindly. You don't know the half of it, Akil replies with a strangled chuckle, that was June by the way. Your second son's daughter. I know. He welcomes my revelation like a pleasant surprise. You kept an eye on us? Yes. I would have acted if you were facing a true menace, mundane or otherwise. I see, I see. That is good. To return to my change of heart, a great many events rocked my perception of the world in the past few years. June is one of them. My second son turned out to be a major disappointment while June herself is kind, smart, and responsible. It certainly impacted my opinion on family hierarchy and the merits of male-only inheritance. You are not considering. I am. When I die, she will inherit the property and quite a few assets besides. You impress me, I admit with genuine care. Supplicant. It has been a while since I last felt the intimate bond created by such a request. The ingrained urge to demand a price for my help fights a short war with an old sense of loyalty and loses. I will not ask for a price from Akil. Speak. My youngest son, Richard, enrolled in the U.S. Army last year following our increased tensions with Mexico. Are you familiar with the situation? Naturally. The Natalies under Lord Yarrick are monitoring the situation with great attention. They favor the American side for a variety of causes ranging from security against the Comanches to the benefits of having a stable government for 1 full year. We are on the brink of war. President Polk ordered Taylor's men south into the Nueces Strip and Mexico will react. Akil nods. Correct. Richard is now a proud dragoon in the 2nd Brigade. Full of bluster, that one. The nation this. Our honor that. His blood runs white hot with the fury of unbridled patriotism. His mocking tone surprises me. I always took him for someone who would support traditional institutions with the firm belief of a man whose position in life depends on them. He must have reconsidered his values at a fundamental level over the past decade. Achilles' breathing grows hard as the memory of his son's departure agitates him. It takes a few seconds for him to take a deep, relaxing sigh. Funny things, wars. Victory or defeat, there will always be one foolhardy charge or one vainglorious assault that kills all of its participants. Then, 10 years from now, some Washington asshole will paint a nice scene about the whole affair. You want me to get him out? I wish, but no. If life has told me one thing, it is that we must learn some lessons ourselves. I do not expect you to shield him from bayonets. I only wish for him not to lose his life in a stupid, preventable way. Can you do that? I can travel west and keep an eye on him, if you wish. I may not save him, but I will extract him if he is taken prisoner or if he is on the run. Good enough. Yes, good enough. We keep quiet for a while, Akil lost to his musings and me observing him. Say, I did not offer payment, he asks as an afterthought. No need. I think of us as family. He laughs at that. One short exhalation that soon turns into a wince of pain. I will keep you apprised, I tell him. No need. I have an understanding with my doctor. When you are gone, he will increase the dosage of some of my medicines and thus shorten my already minute lifespan. All my affairs are in order and I have no intention to dawdle and be a burden on June and the staff. You will let go of the world? I ask. You do not age, do you? Then you will be spared the indignities of your own body failing you. Waking every morning, weakened. Dimmer. A slow wreck that nothing can stop. His gaze grows clouded as he contemplates his own mortality. Death is not a failure. I am eager to shed this body and see what lies beyond, not because I despair, but because I can no longer grow in this crumbling vessel. You will stay here and look after our family, won't you? For as long as I live. Good. Now, I have never been one for long farewells. You must go to the wine cave. I thought it was never finished. Papa completed it a few years before he died. I think he left you something there. I sealed it after his passing and never entered it, but I cleared the entrance every spring. It should still be easily accessible. I see. This is goodbye, you who may or may not be my sister. For what it's worth, I think Papa is right and whatever you have become is still you. Thank you, Akil. Yes, yes. Now be gone with you. And look after everyone. I will. Hopefully, for a very, very long time. Farewell Akil, it was a pleasure seeing you one last time. My brother chuckles and rests back into his pillow, closing his eyes. I can tell that he is in pain and do not wish to annoy him further. I do feel something, though the cold of my mind significantly dampens the intensity of the emotion. I close the door quietly behind me on my way out. June is gone. For now. I do not return to the entrance. My steps carry me further into the old house until I finally arrive at my old bedroom, but I do not walk in. I will not find anything that belongs to me within this place I used to know more than any other. Several occupants have come since then and left their mark. The only prize I will reap would be a sense of violation, of breached den. I feel agitated and fear that bringing too many strong emotions to the surface would be unwise, and so I stop my hand before it can grip the handle and turn around, heading back. If I had not been taken that night decades ago and turned into what I have become, I would have followed a much different path. There would have been no midnight rides, no battles and no heists. No guns. Well, less guns in any case. I would have probably found a suitable husband I could have loved and trusted, who would have supported me and my projects rather than impose his will as some tend to do. I would have built a rum distillery and managed it for years. I would be here now, in this room, caring for my dying brother supported by my children and grandchildren. We would have had massive family reunions with luncheons lasting well into the night. I think that I would have been happy. Just as I am now. There was much to discover and many incredible people to meet. A mortal could not understand the ecstasy of the hunt, of killing a werewolf and drinking them dry, of dancing in the midst of immortals dressed in fineries from another age. Yes. It was, in many ways, a worthy life I have lived so far. I made it so through my own efforts. Bah, enough. I am on a schedule. I retrace my steps and make for the exit. June is waiting in the main hall. Her expression is complicated. I climb down the stairs, taking care to make some noise, and still she does not turn her eyes. Her mind remains fully captured by a painting on the wall I had ignored on my way up. Now, I finally look at it. Half a century ago, our father had sat us to celebrate Achilles' 21st birthday in a way that would immortalize the occasion. Some cheap artist from Baton Rouge came with his brushes and meek manners and drew a portrait of our family. His work had been awkward. I can now easily spot the flaws in his style and some too hasty strokes that blurred the contours of Dad's face. Despite the shoddy work, there is no mistaking the people present, as one of them has not changed at all. June finally turns to me, mouth open in mixed horror and surprise, so I do the most vampire thing I can. I lightly tap her shoulder, smile mysteriously, and take my leave before she can recover. Being darkly secretive is a form of boasting. Outside, the smell of wet earth from recent rain and the sounds of nature renew my sense of nostalgia. The property has changed and has also stayed the same. Like me. The path to the wine cave is overgrown now, Achille being unable to clear it himself. I tread it with ease and end up at the edge of a gate seemingly stuck into a small hill. The surrounding vegetation assaults it from all sides in a furious attempt to close the gap. Green sprouts and other tendrils grasp towards each other like grasping limbs frozen in time. I use the iron key on the lock and push in. The door protests the intrusion with a deafening creak. Papa built himself a nice little haven here, away from prying eyes, and I immediately realize why. Two of the walls are lined with moldy bookshelves filled with cheap editions of magic theory books. A desk by the side collects dust, its surface barren. The entire far side of the room is covered by a large workshop filled with curious tools, including a few optical ones with their lenses shining strangely in the darkness. On it sits a box and a sealed envelope. I neglect the books. Most of them are easily obtainable and I know their content already, having spent a decade learning from one of the greatest arcane smiths who ever lived. A quick inspection of the desk yields nothing of value. The room was thoroughly cleaned before it was vacated. This is it. I open the envelope with trepidation and take my time to unfold the yellowed paper. My father's smooth cursive greets me in all its comforting familiarity. My hand goes to my neck, to the pendant where his last instruction rests locked forever in a case of steel. Do not die before me. I fulfilled his request and read the text, written in French, to see if there is another one. My dearest daughter. When you read this, I will probably be in a better place, or at least I hope so. How I wish I could have held you in my arms one more time, but despite your absence I find comfort in the knowledge that you are safe. Jimena kept me aware of your progress through small missives slipped here and there throughout the years. The woman is paranoid. But considering who you face, I suppose caution is warranted. I am leaving soon. As I am writing these words, I have finished tidying up the cave and getting rid of the more incriminating correspondences. Know that I have not spent all of my last few years in idle occupation, sipping rum and flirting with the ladies. Only the majority of them. I also did a little bit of trading here and there. You know your old man. Eventually, I got my hands on something that will help you. Jimena informed me that it would be some time before you could use it, and I find that I do not mind. I very much enjoy the idea that you carry this present into eternity, one gift from me, by your side, forever. Please take good care of it and give your enemies hell. This is farewell, my daughter. I wish I could have helped you through your original projects of having a large family and opening that distillery. Fate had something else in store for you and you faced it head-on like the indomitable woman I raised. Remember me, remember us, and keep an eye out for Achille and his swarm. God knows he needs all the help he can get. Your mother would be proud. With all my love. Your papa. Silly, silly papa. Silly. I did get my family, and my distillery too. And now I am crying blood on the silly paper. Bah. I fold the letter religiously, replacing it in the envelope. The container is locked until I try the key in the envelope Achilles gave me. It opens to reveal a velvet padded interior like a jewelry box, and enshrined within, a mage gauntlet. And what a gauntlet it is! Smooth, elegant lines of the darkest black shine ominously like midnight stars on a glove that redefines threatening grace. If there was ever a vampire empress, she would have worn it. I recognize obsidian as the primary material for the frame, one that is as potent as it is difficult to handle. Chains of silver alloy bind the lithe knuckles to grant the artifact even more power. This is, perhaps, one of the mightiest foci one can make, and it looks good. An exquisite tool and a fashion statement. A small, handwritten note lies near the wrist. Celestine Blackhand Macdueba's Regalia. Certificate of Authenticity of the Rosenthal Consortium. Wow! I recognize that name. Celestine Macdueb was a 15th-century unconventional Scottish mage known for her brilliance and her short fuse. She invented several interesting spells, including the short-range killing one that afforded her the moniker, but also an explosive diarrhea hex she would use on rivals. Now, her gauntlet belongs to me, thanks to my papa. I caress the smooth surface lovingly and consider how lucky I am. When I came back to my home after my escape from Lancaster custody, I almost expected him to be gone, or dead. I hesitated and delayed because I knew the most likely outcome of our reunion to be curses and screams. Instead, he welcomed me and sent me on my way with a gun and a promise. He was wrong in a way. Dalton, Loth, and Jimena became my family, and I realized that without them my path would have been much darker. It would have been cut short quickly as well. I do not know how I would have behaved if rage and bitterness had guided my actions. The memory of that time remains dark. I had traveled the land harried by time, filth, and the thirst. A Gabrielite almost killed me. Instead of disappearing like a ghost, I may have slaughtered my way through the countryside in a fit of rage and despair. I would not be the same person without them. I grabbed the gauntlet and placed it in a small bag by my side, replacing the standard focus I had purchased before. I make a note of recovering the books, just in case, and leave the wine cave. On my way out I meet an old man waiting by the road. He smokes a pipe with dignity, dressed in comfortable and clean outdoor clothes, but his eyes are laughing. I raise an eyebrow as, in my mind, mortals do not have the right to be silent and mysterious. I should maintain the exclusivity. Hello, cousin, the man greets me. I freeze and dig through my memories, the Rosenthal essence proving necessary for this one. Cousin. I have some cousins. I even met one on the night I returned. Lucian. I blurt out. Ha! I knew it. All those years and people telling me I had dreamt it, but no. My cousin Ariane is immortal. So, are you some sort of Greek hero or something? Is it a mythic item taken from a dead god? Something of the sort, I mumble, completely out of sorts. I was recognized. Twice. All right then. Are you on your way to keep an eye on Richard? How did you know? Arg. By the Watcher, I am supposed to be the one who surprises people. Being emotional interferes with my darkly charismatic femme fatale persona. The man nods wisely. I thought old Akil would come around, eventually. On your way then. I'll keep the house safe while you go slaying hydras or something. Good luck. Fine. Goodbye Lucian, it was good seeing you again. I apologize for, coming back from the dead. Oh, don't worry about it. Everything in life is relative, including your relatives. Bye-bye. Ugh. May 1st, 1846. I was not granted the time to return to my home base and muster a force. 100 disciplined militiamen would have probably been welcomed by Taylor since there was a dire need for more trained troops. Unfortunately, fate forced my hand with news of a skirmish and Mexican forces moving on Fort Texas. I try to ignore the fact that dragoons died during the opening engagement, and that there is a chance that my mission failed before it could even begin. I remember the loss of a potential vassal because I overestimated myself decades ago, and so I decide to head west without delay, even if it means having access to fewer resources. I am confident that I can, shall we say, convince Richard Superior to be avaricious of the life of his men. I barely stop by a small pond to cast a message spell. Messaging spells are interesting as they require knowing the exact interlocutor and his approximate location before casting. The power required to hold a conversation is also significant, as is the need for focus. Fortunately, I merely must contact Boston to inform them that I would be lightly interfering with the military and request access to Natalie's land, which their local representative agrees to immediately. I manage to set a meeting with their one caster capable of message spells at the edge of their territory. With the diplomatic aspect of the problem solved, I can set out without concern. I make use of a more recent series of safe houses set up by Constantine on my way west. Those are maintained by the different clans in order to facilitate safe transit, a measure that we took from our European cousins. I rely on those for the first 3 nights on my ride by the coast, then find myself in the wilds on the 4th, at the edge of Texas. I decide to stop in a cove with tall leafy trees and the sea lapping on a stone beach further down as the night ends. I climb down from Métis, who looks at me with the silent, judgmental disappointment of someone who has not had her ear yet. I recover a small bag from her harness and remove the desired snack, which I wave around as I demonstrate. Her captive attention spurs my scholarly enthusiasm. Since the dawn of time, our worst weakness has always been the sun. How many of my kin have succumbed as dawn caught them unaware or unprepared? How many turned to ash under the yellow orb's vengeful radiance? Too many. Too many, I say. Thankfully, my sire, bless his ingenuity if not his kindness, came up with a permanent solution. Métis takes a step forward, head tilted in a vain attempt to intimidate me. Silly pony. I am not done. Behold, the instant resting place spell. After casting it, I shall be shoved into Mother Earth's comfy embrace, safe from pesky incineration. Isn't that grand? Have the damn ear. I forfeit the snack to Métis' decidedly pointy teeth and raise a gauntlet fist. Entomb. The earth takes me. 1 day later. Pwah. Pwah 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 pwah. Pwah. URG, I think I swallowed a worm. The irredeemable imbecile who shall remain anonymous makes a pathetic attempt at unsticking dried earth from her completely ruined traveling dress. She looks like a mudslide. Forsooth. If it is not my old enemy, the direct and completely predictable consequences of my own actions. Curse you. Curse you unto the dawn. My moment of melodrama finished, I swallow my pride and go for a short swim in the ocean. The salty water can just finish what the mud started, I care not, I am not going around looking like an ambulating nymph-shaped bog. After coaxing Métis into letting me ride her through bribery, I stop at a ranch to append a few bucketfuls of crystalline salvation on my unworthy head. A passing farmer approaches but a very frank, I don't want to hear it, sends him on his way. Thankfully, the delay is short, and the incident only claims my self-esteem as a victim. Soon, I approach Corpus Christi, the town where the army used to be stationed and where I will link up with my contact. The weather is rather warm, but drier than what I am used to in my native Louisiana. Texas has drier parts further west, but not here. For one irrational moment, and as the ranch-turned-trading post-turned-garrison town comes into view, I fear that a place named Body of Christ will somehow repel me. I think that a mighty barrier might descend from the heavens to protect the hallowed ground, smiting the inhuman beings in their midst. Then, a vigorous young couple does, from behind a barn, what I will generously call a Corpus Christi tussle. I also quickly come across the Corpus Christi whorehouse and all my worries disappear like wrinkled dollar bills into an overstretched corset. Why should I care that I can no longer blaspheme? The mortals are doing it for me. I crossed the bloated body of a watering hole that grew too fast so as to accommodate its many bored guests. It does not take me long to find the army's previous encampment, now mostly empty. The first problem arises when the mage I contacted, and who was supposed to meet me, fails to materialize. I take a moment to ascertain that, yes, I am at the right entrance. I even flare my aura for good measure. Nothing. A small tingle runs along my spine in a feeling I have come to recognize and rely on. My intuition informs me that something is up. Well, that is nice, but I am on a schedule. I manage to isolate a sentry and feed on him, leaving the poor sod woozy. Better not take risks with the thirst. I also find the local well and fill a borrowed pot. The watery reflection will serve as a focus for the message spell. The mage does not reply. A worrisome development. He is, to my knowledge, the only long-range communication specialist for the Natalies. They are not exactly known for fostering mages. No matter, I am on a mission to locate a lone dragoon. I climb back on Métis and head south after my quarry without too much hassle. 4,000 men marching with their baggage leave a mark on a land that a blind simpleton could not miss. We ride hard and the landscape maintains its green sheen for now. There is something dry in the air that I can taste on the back of my tongue, a sun-baked flavor hinting at the height of summer when light will push down on the land, settling on the shoulders of mortals like a heavy cloak. It will be different from the engulfing wetness of the marshland but no less oppressive, I can tell. I find myself missing winter once more. Cold is more my thing. The land is mostly flat here and we make good time through the wilderness. A small draft carries the smell of the ocean, a constant companion these past few days. I find little comfort in it. The fateful tingle has not stopped, and though I detect no immediate danger, I am still wary. Just as dawn approaches, the road widens and the trees shorten to reveal the estuary of the Rio Grande, a patchwork of green grass, ochre sand, and blue water. A fort built on top of a small inlet stands vigil over the idyllic locale. The earthwork was obviously made in a rush but it does look defensible with all that water around it. Torches set at regular intervals protect its approach. Even this early, a flurry of activity shows that soldiers are already awake and active. I hide behind a few trees and change into a clean dark green traveling dress, smooth my hair into a decent do and ride forth. I come across a patrol on foot made of young men who might be able to grow enough facial hair for a pencil mustache through collective efforts. They flinch when Métis trots by, but the presence of the fairer sex motivates them to straighten their backs. I am briefly asked a few questions and subsequently directed to Lieutenant Briggs, who is in charge of keeping track of things. I admit that they look rather fetching in their white and blue uniforms. I am stopped again at the fort gate by a grizzled sergeant with a coldly assessing look. I can taste his apprehension though he masks it well. The silly pony has this effect on everyone and particularly on those who have seen death. Some primal memory from ancient times resurfaces to warn them that she is more than she seems. Who might you be and what in the name of God are you doing out here at this time, woman? I adopt my tragic heroine persona, one of a girl who rode through dangerous lands for a noble cause. She is stricken by tragedy, yet still defiant. She is also hard to resist when she makes very reasonable requests. My name is Ariane Raynaud, I bear an urgent message for Richard Raynaud, a dragoon in the 2nd Brigade. I would like to find him, please. I was told that Lieutenant Briggs could help me. I apologize, miss. I cannot grant a civilian access to the camp. We are in a state of war, in case you didn't know. I am aware, sir. I do not need to get in. Knowing where he is and giving him the message would suffice. Please, will you at least tell where I can find my brother? A small lie, but one that will serve me well. Even if Richard is here and remembers that none of his sisters is called Ariane, he will merely assume that the old sergeant misheard. The man himself scratches his beard as I grow impatient. Dawn will fall in an hour and I am not eager to repeat the emergency tomb experience, thank you very much. Eventually, the benign nature of my question forces a reluctant grunt. He barks an order at one of his subordinates who takes off at a sprint. A few minutes later, an officer with a spring in his step struts to us, mustache waxed and uniform ironed to flat perfection. Even the flickering light of torches reflects on his shiny buttons. The newcomer is dark of hair and eye and his demeanor wordlessly screams of disdainful annoyance. He turns an angry gaze to my helpful sergeant. His nostrils flare as he takes a deep breath in anticipation for some furious tirade, no doubt. I do not have time for this and so I slip from Métis' back and take a quick step forward and curtsy. Thank you so much for taking the time to see me, sir. I apologize for the disturbance, I announce in an aggressively contrite voice. The officer is taken aback and his lambasting dies on his lips as he studies me. He places a pair of spectacles on his aquiline nose and scolds. And what do you think gives you the right to disturb an officer? We are conducting a war here, miss, the affairs of the nation take precedence over whatever you think you are doing. I affect my most pathetic face. Harmless, lips shaking, and eyes filled with sorrow, I plead with all of my being. It does not take long for the officer to crack under the double offensive of peer pressure and basic human empathy. Unfortunately, his reaction is not the one I expected. The emotion I decipher in his embarrassed face and aura is not acceptance, but guilt. He knows. He already knows. Where is my brother, sir? I ask, this time pushing on his sense of pressure. That is Richard Raynaud was captured on April 25 by the Rio Grande with most of his squadron. I am sorry. By the Watcher, what the arg? It takes all of my self-control to mask the rage I feel right now and affect a tragic expression. I force my poor mouth into a "oh" of surprise instead of an of rage. Did I fail before I could even start? As far as we know they are being treated with care. We recovered some wounded who named your brother amongst the captives and the Mexicans have so far respected the rules of war. He frowns. Though you never know with those Catholics. The sergeant clears his throat very noisily and the lieutenant immediately tries to correct his blunder. I am sure they are fine. I thank you, Lieutenant. I believe I need a moment. You're about to keel over, miss. Come in and we'll look after you, the sergeant says with some concern. I cannot accept. Dawn is on its way and I feel the coming of lethargy on the edge of my mind. I need to find cover. Thank you kindly, Sergeant. I fear that I must refuse, I tell him, not unkindly, and turn Métis around. They do not try to hold me back. My best of ponies tends to attract attention when she starts to move and there are few who would not be happy to see the back of her. I click my tongue to urge her on and we return north, towards the woods we just passed. I close my eyes and let intuition guide my steps. I need an enclosed space. As we move to the road and eventually to a side path, I consider what I just learned. I should extract him. Assuming he was taken by Permanentes, and not some militia, he will be held at the base of the Mexican forces in Matamoros. The war has not lasted long enough, nor has there been enough battles for there to be a prisoner camp. I am working on more assumptions than facts here, but assumptions are all I have. I ignore the tingle along my spine and realize that we are now above a small entrance into a rocky hill. A quick inspection reveals some sort of smuggler cache, currently abandoned. It should do for today. Or will it? I wince at the memory of the sun on my skin. A flash of phantom pain surges along my flank. The sun and arrogance are the most common killers of our kind and I just look down on both of them. Out of the hundreds of thousands of days I could spend being alive, there is bound to be an unlucky one. I cannot take the risk of leaving this realm with oaths unfulfilled simply because I refuse to be dirty. Time to bite the bullet. Learning from the previous experience, I undress completely, stash my belongings in my bag and lift my head to see that Métis already trotted away. I do not have the time for any concealment work. I sigh, raise my gauntlet and cast the spell. 1 day later. I spring from the ground like a devil from his box, in the state of nature and covered in charcoal-colored dust. A quick inspection reveals that none are here to witness my embarrassment, so I simply grab my gear and walk a few hundred feet to the sea for a quick dip. Note to self, find a drying spell. Less than a week after my emergency travel and I am already walking around but naked like some savage. Truly, the veneer of civilization is a thin one indeed. Métis reappears after I am acceptably dry and we ride west at full speed and right into the American army. In retrospect, I should have guessed it from the trampled earth, dodged mounted patrols, and numerous animal droppings. Métis and I crest a slope to find the valley before us covered in rows of well-ordered white tents lit by evenly spaced campfires. Even late, the air is filled with the various noises of camp life as soldiers and aides go about their business. I hear laughter, clamors, and orders as well as the clangs and bangs of material being handled by poorly paid men. Nervousness tempered by discipline gives a spring to the step of patrolling officers, and extra strength in the arm of artillerists polishing their limbered guns. They are making ready for battle. I consider going through and immediately realize the massive hassle it would be to lie and manipulate my way through layers of stressed bureaucrats. I turn Métis around and we make for the hills north and away from the Rio. I follow a goat trail up another tiny hill and as we reach the top, I spot a small copse of dried pine trees. I sample the air. It tastes like sap, leather, soap, cheap aftershave and gunpowder. It also smells like the sea and will do so until I can take a proper bath. Closing my eyes brings into focus the heartbeats of dozen men and as I turn back, I realize why. This spot provides a commanding view of the valley below. Any scout worth their salt could crawl through the underbrush to count men, horses, and guns with reasonable accuracy. Some enterprising corporal laid an ambush just in case. I could avoid them with significant effort, or I could resort to a little bit of vampiric expediency. I refuse to call it shenanigans. Deception here serves the clear and explicit purpose of saving time, therefore it is a tactically sound, perfectly justified decision and the fact that I will have fun is only a side effect of said plan. I grab my bag and rummage through it to find my gray cloak, the only cold weather piece of cloth I packed. I drape it across my shoulder and raise my obsidian gauntlet. I love casting in Lycian. New Charan. Let darkness be. The sentence is barely more than a susurrus and still, darkness answers. Even before the words cross my lips, the little light filtering through the cloud cover had dimmed and shadows had stretched like waking cats. The language of magic plays with time and mind like a creature of flesh and blood. The cloak on my back turns into the black of the abyss, like a hole in the world. Filaments quest outward for more fabric to consume and the vestment becomes almost organic in appearance, a broken entity crawling out from some unspeakable dimension. In my branch of magic, darkness is more than a mere absence of light. It hides and tricks. Sometimes, it hungers, like me. The darkness is a comfortable and welcoming cocoon where the sun is nothing but a distant memory and others lose their way, their ancestral brains screaming for the safety of cave and campfire. I am home. And now, I feel something else, not exactly an imbalance and more an opportunity. With darkness present, its twin concept tugs at me and I am only too happy to oblige. I bend to the side and grab a fallen branch from the rocky ground, which I hold in my free hand to serve as a target. I have a plan. The casting is smooth and effortless as it sometimes happens when the world aligns perfectly. New Sarahin. Let there be light. I remember struggling with the spell at first because I thought of light as something that reveals. A mortal tool that I no longer have a use for. I have since realized my mistake. A dark purple orb rises atop the branch which I prune to leave a scythe-like shape of false gnawed bones. Then another. And another. "Hey, do you see that?" a voice whispers from the meadow. Métis perks up as she likes teasing mortals almost as much as teasing me and eating ears. I swear that she makes herself noisy on purpose. Stomp. 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 Shoo. Someone is coming, someone else orders. I pass by, clad in a gown of midnight and carrying the macabre regalia of my office. The purple glint of the 3 orbs I conjured tremble around it like captive souls. Gasps. Moans. The sound of soiled trousers. The apocalypse pony stops without my prompt. She huffs the air, nostrils flaring, lungs working like 2 great bellows. Her massive head tilts right and 2 beady eyes sweep the underbrush like the glare of some hellish lighthouse. Her red, horrifying gaze slows on shapes that start to sob and mutter prayers to whatever deity might get them out of this death trap. Not to be outdone, I let the mortals stare at the void black content of my hood. I wait a few moments before urging Métis forward. She rears and the ground trembles when she lands. Then, we are off. Strangely, the patrol decides not to challenge us. Our travel remains unimpeded as we continue west. I keep the darkness spell active with some effort but drop the light spell to help me hide. The landscape changes as we move away from the road, tall grass spreads out in all directions, only interrupted by the odd trees. There is very little light to be had and I must resort to my superior senses to get past the first Mexican patrol. I lead Métis behind a ridge and peer out with some curiosity at the other side of this conflict. Some of the differences are obvious. First, they all wear thick mustaches that could double as paintbrushes. Second, some of them look considerably less well-fed than their American counterparts. I do not notice any difference in terms of discipline. The squad walks with careful attention under the direction of an officer wielding a small saber. They wear dark blue uniforms, so that only their shakos truly differentiate them from their foes. I see how this could be problematic in a pitched battle. Oh, well. I wait until they are gone and keep moving forward. I still feel the weight of destiny driving me forward. Something is going to happen, I am sure of it. I doubt that the disappearance of my contact is a coincidence. The problem is that I have no idea of what I might face, or even if I would be in danger. To my knowledge, there are no foes here who would justify such actions. As I think, we trudge through more tall grass. I see a tiny mound on my right with a lonely oak, tall and wide. I direct Métis there and jump up to have a look at the obstacle arrayed before me. To the west and 500 paces away, the Ejército del Norte, Mexico's Army of the North, has made camp. Where the American base was made of well-ordered rows so that you could not distinguish one unit from another, this one is made of tents sprouting together like mushrooms, like a patchwork of heterogeneous groups gathering for a festival. Where the Americans had patrolling officers, this one has roving bands of camp followers. Women gossip merrily around cooking pots. The professionalism I had seen in the patrol is much less prevalent here. Most importantly, they lack something that my instincts recognize as drive. There was a sort of hunger hanging around the other army, a sort of excitement, of eagerness. Here, even the regulars eye the command tent with reluctance. They pull on ill-fitting uniforms and slog from unwilling group to wary squad. I am unimpressed. The only noticeable advantage they have is number. Even then, I can spot so many civilians, including whole families, that I am unable to ascertain exactly how many of those present are combat personnel. They do appear to have some cavalry. As for their guns, they all look antiquated. Most of the muskets are the notoriously obsolete and unreliable brown Bess they must have purchased in bulk from the United Kingdom. Looking at the camp, I come to a realization that chills me more than the sight of battle ever could. Even accounting for irregulars, the Mexican army should have around 4,000 men while the American has 2,000. The Battle of Waterloo counted almost 20 times that number. 20 times. On each side. By the Watcher, any decisive battle fought here would barely count as a skirmish on the old continent. I would not foolishly assume that we are any different, having only a handful of vampires over the whole of Illinois for example. We barely have 20 lords in total. You could pick up more by carrying a bleeding Lycian from Basel to Paris without trying. I really hope the deterrence Constantine offers and the old clan's arrogance will protect us for a few more decades. Let them dismember India. Let them rend China. Let them not come here. I shake my head. There is nothing I can do right now. I am still a small fry in the grand scheme of things. Worst comes to worst, I have weathered storms before. I am confident that I can find a way to survive this one as well. I assume that the shore will be guarded, or at least populated, and decide to head north again. Métis carries me away from the many lights and into fields of colorful flowers dancing under the light wind. I would find the exercise relaxing if it were not for my ever-increasing sense of not exactly dread. Anticipation. We leave the army to our back and left, waiting a bit before angling back towards the road. A couple of hours later I come across a branch in the path as well as another ambush. High bushes by both sides of the road hide heartbeats and even one person snoring softly. A mage cast a rudimentary spell dragging across the trampled road. I can taste their unstable aura at the back, the telltale signs of a poorly trained practitioner. To my knowledge, there should be no mage group in the vicinity. Curious. I can surmise from their location that they are Mexicans. This is a unique opportunity for me to get some information from an isolated group that I can eliminate without major consequences. I need to know more about Matamoros, where I assume the prisoners should be. I need to know if there are any events that would warrant the foreshadowing I feel now. The only difficulty I see is language. I can barely say Buenos Dias without Jimena ribbing me. My only hope is that they have an interpreter to interrogate captives. Otherwise, they will try to bring me back to their camp and I will have to eliminate them. I believe this is worth the risk. You might as well come out. I announce, as I stop Métis just ahead of the crossing. I smile at the 1 second of stupefied silence this grants me before the sides of the road bursts with yelling militiamen brandishing rusty weapons and polished facial hair. I am soon surrounded on all parts by Pelocity. After much ordering around Para. A sneering irregular steps forward to, I assume, grab the reins. I am most amused by his expression of absolute disbelief when he realizes that there is none. Sadly for him, he makes the mistake of keeping his hand in the air. A snap, a yell, and the man now holds the mutilated stump of his little finger. More screams arise on all sides while Métis chews the lost appendage without breaking eye contact. Good pony. The man reaches for a pistol and I believe that negotiations will fail until a clear and distinctively female voice brings order to the screaming mob. Ya basta. Silence descends upon the quivering assembly and their 9-fingered member, the men part to let through a tall woman who walks with the assured gait of a lioness. They allow her through with obvious respect, to my surprise, and I finally realize my mistake. Some of the women I saw back at the camp were not followers. They were fighters. Clad in a brown traveling robe that has seen much abuse, the woman looks severe. Her dark hair is held in a tight braid and shifts to gray at the temples. Her skin speaks of decades under the sun, so brown and wrinkled it is, and no one would call her beautiful. Yet, she has a sort of magnetism to her. I feel it in her posture and the way she walks, strutting as if she owned the black soil beneath her dusty shoes. She is armed with an antique musket and a long knife hangs by her side. It has seen much use. I admit to being suitably impressed. The unexpected Amazon glares at me with naked malevolence, planted here with her gnarly hands on her waist. Her confidence almost cancels my natural height advantage. What is it, Pendasia, first time seeing a soldadera? You are a combatant. No, I keep the knife to skewer pumpkins. Of course, I'm a combatant. I keep my face impassive and dismiss the comment. She is the one who laid the spell, and I find her interesting. I notice a small statue of who I expect to be Mary by her side, wrapped in golden thread with stylized bells made of wood. This is a rudimentary focus. The warrior woman is a rare case of an untrained mage who pushed herself until she could reliably cast. She probably believes it to be some sort of miracle. People like her began entire magical traditions when they taught their methods to their gifted children and apprentices. I did not expect to see a curandera, a Mexican witch, so far north. Your command of the English language is impressive. Yes. I learned it from Texans when I was running with the Comanches. They taught me so that we could ransom them properly, she explains with a sinister smile. It fades when I do not react with the horrified shock she was expecting. I have two options. Option 1, I stick with my cover story and pretend to be a foolishly brave woman on a quest. Option 2, I reveal a little more of the world I belong to. Just a smidgen of aura to freeze the woman to her core and make her feel inside exactly where we both stand on the food chain. I think I will go with the second one as it is the most likely to get me answers. I judge that she would dismiss an idiot, brave or otherwise. I am also less inclined to act with subtlety when working with so many unknowns. Is that so? I casually ask. What are you doing here, chica? You look lost, she demands, all attempt at subtle intimidation abandoned. Her goons feel like something is odd and close rank on both sides, though they give Métis head a wide berth. I was on my way to Matamoros to rescue a relative. How about you? Strange place to be lying in wait. Should you not be on the other side of the army? We are not here to serve the government, she spits before her expression turns dangerous. Before she can escalate, I distract her by slipping from Métis' back. My decision causes a small scuffle as my captors scramble to surround me threateningly. This is one of the rare cases where my gender is an advantage. The militiamen may have tried to physically subdue a man attempting the same move. Instead, they just stand at a respectful distance to prevent my escape. They do not know how to handle me. The woman does. I don't know what you think you are doing, chica. We are no longer in your daddy's ranch. You are coming with us nice and slow, and I'll find a general for that fancy stallion of yours. Mare. Ha. Métis is a girl. I bore my essence into her defenseless one with ease. Some mages can resist charm better than others, given enough training. She is not of them. I taste many things from the luminous aura: confidence, annoyance, wariness. Wariness? If you are not serving the government, then what are you doing here? I ask on a cue. I feel her resistance. The setting is wrong, and she knows that she should be the one asking questions. The discrepancy between our apparent hierarchy and the way the conversation flows grates her. I could brute force it, but I stop myself. What would Sinead do? I snuck past both armies and I have seen things. Perhaps I can help. I ask, pushing just a little bit. The crowd is silent as they await the soldatera's decision. She considers me for one moment and I nudge her curiosity just enough to subsume her natural distrust. We are looking for a beast who preys on the people of the nearby village. He has returned every week for the past month to take someone. He should be back tonight, and this time, he is not leaving. Something clicks in my mind with the inevitability of a falling boulder running down a slope. This is it. The last few nights of tingling spine and of anticipation, of searching in vain for some sort of sign, have led to this moment. I am expected to act, assigned a role by the hand of fate, one that I would be unwise to shirk away from. Fate is calling. I have not felt so strong a pull since I saved Melusine back in Louisiana. The consequences of my decision will have long-lasting consequences. I consider ignoring it and rushing to Matamoros, but dismiss the urge almost immediately. I lost a potential vassal long ago by being too greedy, not by being careful. I am not so stupid as to ignore such a dire warning, not to mention that the disappearance of the Natalie's mage could very well be related. I must know more. We should head there then, I finally say. Her traits twist with fury, which I expected. I am, after all, challenging her authority by taking the initiative. Before she can manifest her anger, I decide to reveal my hand. I do not blast her with my aura. I push her, pressure her, box her in. The proud woman shivers, frozen to her bones by an otherworldly wind that no cloak can ward off. And then, I am blocked. The idol of the Virgin by her side shines blue in my sight as a warning. No matter, I have already achieved my goal. Perhaps, I repeat more slowly, I can help. I have seen such things happening in the past. Madre de Dios, I just felt as if someone stepped over my tomb. Brr. She crosses herself and I grit my teeth as the gesture sets me on edge. It must be a sign of God. Come on Pendasia, let's go back to the village and talk. No more ambushing. I need to check on Pedro. He was supposed to report every 10 minutes, that lazy good for nothing, she complains offhandedly. Ah. Then we should really hurry, I suggest as I climb back on Métis. The crowd of mortals senses that something is off and they gather protectively around their leader. She takes the branching path at a run. I follow them and consider the important question. What are we facing? It cannot be a rogue. They do not have enough self-control to stop at one victim. It cannot be a feral werewolf either. That still leaves a wide range of possibilities, from a sick human to vampire. By the Watcher, I hope it is not a vampire. The dusty road snakes down towards the river until the tall grass gives ground to tended fields of wheat and corn. After a minute, we reach the Rio Grande and the path angles right. The village itself appears made of stone buildings painted white, with low, wide roofs of straw. Nothing seems out of sort until we see the town square. There, at the crossroad of empty streets, lies the body of an irregular. He still grips a loaded pistol in his unmoving hands. A wide straw hat rolled against a merchant's stall, now empty. Que pedo con eso, my companion softly swears. The spectacle is so bizarre that I stop Métis in her tracks. The corpse clashes against the otherwise mundane background in a stark contrast that wakes the artist in me. What makes this so captivating, I wonder? The gash in his neck. Oh. No blood. He was exsanguinated. The deathly silence that falls on us as we take in the grisly scene makes the gasp of pain behind me that much more poignant. I turn and come face to face with a man who was not there, who should not be there. He has wavy black hair that falls to his chin, a thin mouth twisted into a rictus of gleeful cruelty. He wears a dark leather coat and bears no obvious weapons, and yet I cannot help but recoil. His eyes are gray, bloodshot, and they display the most manic rage, the most desperate hatred I have ever felt in my life. Their raw, bleeding intensity freezes me to my very soul. His left hand is buried deep in the soldatera's rib cage. She gasps in immense pain as the buried limb keeps her upright. He has no aura. Nothing. On instinct, I send a tendril of essence that hits an invisible wall. Still nothing. He is as void as an empty grave. Slowly, with contemptuous wrath, the man lifts the dying form of my guide, then his arm blurs. I dodge the corpse. Her blood splashes against my dress as I slip from Métis' back. Go. I order. She can do nothing here. By the time I hit the ground, my foe has killed 3 more men. I rush him, cursing myself for not having taken any weapons. What an idiot I am, spending 10 years safely and then forgetting where I come from. I am not traveling without a full arsenal ever again, even in friendly territory. Then battle is joined and there is no more time for thought. I still have my claws and I still have my skill. I know immediately that it will not be enough. We throw ourselves at each other in a mirror display of fury. Our style is the same aggressive and relentless offense filled with unpredictability. We both walk the edge. One wrong move and the fight is over. A claw to the throat or a finger through the chest. The matter of a single instant. We swipe and dodge and grapple and escape, then I manage to kick him away. He stands there with his condescending sneer while I bend forward covered in wounds. I have deep furrows on my arms and shoulders where he raked or where I dodged a bit too late, dyeing the dress in a darker shade. This is bad. He was always too precise. The issue is not speed, the man simply moves perfectly. He breaks my rhythm. Counters too well. Even with the help of intuition I could not match his peerless style. But I am not done yet. I grab behind me and take one of the stalls by its side, then channel as much Natalie's and werewolf essence as I can to swing it before me. My strength multiplies for a brief moment and I move backward, anticipating his tendency to get in instead of out. The maneuver works. The edge of the stall travels much faster than my arm and the heavy piece of furniture crashes against his guard, shattering in pieces as he strikes it but forcing him to take a step back. Matehin. Subdue. 3 purple snakes of chain-link scales whip forth as I charge him. He twists backward and to the right. Into a mortal. The man he chooses had been scrambling for his gun instead of running away like the 2 other survivors of this brief slaughter. My foe grabs him by the collar and tosses his mewling form in the path of my spell with disdain. 1 snake impacts but the 2 others dodge around. The sneering man boots the mortal in the back, pushing him to me. He jumps over the now captured militia and straight at me, leaving both bindings behind. In instead of out. As planned. Perfect. I drop the spell and cast the one I had prepared in the meanwhile. I expected him to find a way to close the distance. Jarn. Flay. The backlash of merely speaking my sire's creation sends a ghastly sensation up to my elbow, like being caressed by razor blades that never quite pierce the skin. My foe is not quite so lucky. The spell catches him midair. It shreds his extended arm to the marrow and climbs up to the right side of his face, leaving behind mangled, bloody chunks of flesh clinging to exposed bones. I sneer in turn. The man's coat disintegrates to reveal a silvery collar that stops the damage from hurting his neck. He lands and charges without pause. His hand strikes my chest. I deflect as best as I can. Pain. Movement. I crash through a shoddy brick wall back first, through filthy muck and against a pail of hay. It softens the landing, somehow. More pain. I cough blood. That jerk got me in the lung. By the Watcher, what the hell? Need to get out. I cannot win. Still cannot even feel his aura, nor hear him. I am pretty sure he is a vampire from the way he moves and with such perfect control, he has to be. A lord. I need to escape. I climb to my feet, hands against the gaping wound in my flank. Claws are crystallized essence and the damage they inflict does not heal quickly. I am a mess and this place stinks. Speaking of which, that smell is familiar. Yes. This could work. Desperate time. Desperate measures. My enemy steps into the small pigsty just as I break the far wall with a tired punch. One of his arms is just meat and I would expect his expression to have changed. It has not. He is the same controlled maniac as he was 10 seconds and an eternity ago. Worse, the wounds are knitting shut as I watch. Unbelievable. He steps forward. He dodges under the lantern I throw at him, arcing an imperious brow as if asking me, really? The lantern impacts against its intended target, covering it in burning oil. For the first time since we started to fight, my foe shows the first sign of hesitation as an ear-piercing, horrendous screech assaults his senses. He turns just in time to be pelted by the flaming wreck of the pen gate. Several 100 pounds of porcine fury charge with the might of a creature with nothing to lose. I did it. I channeled chaos. Ha! I boast as I escape the death trap through the newly made emergency exit. I land in an enclosure and take off as fast as I can. I see the river in the distance. Perhaps I can. Something grabs my neck and flings me against a post. Sharp things dig into my heel before I can even push myself away. Another post. Grabbed again. Left arm snapped. I grunt in pain and fight back with claws and feet. Too strong. He punches me in the face. I see stars. Not giving up yet. Another wall. I push back but he holds my head against the unyielding bricks. Agony. I scream, this time. Too much. He severed my spine. Cannot move. The sky. I gasp. Cannot angle my gauntlet. The man is there. For the first time, his smile broadens. Fangs. 4. 6. 8. 8 fangs total. A devourer. Hello, sister. I am so. He kneels by my side with casual grace. A bloody hand exposes my neck despite my weak struggles, then he bites. The 8 little stilettos dig into my essence like needly spider legs. The pain they cause is intimate and exquisite. Agony expands to smother my thoughts, my instincts. He has not even drawn it in yet. Toying with me. That is enough, Malachim. A voice I have not heard in decades now breaks the silence, warm and soft as desert sand. I cling to it despite knowing better because I teeter on the edge of the abyss and any buoy is better than none. One pull is all Malachim needs to destroy me. I am powerless. I hate being powerless. Everything hurts so much. Let her go. I flop back to the ground. Less suffering now. I regain enough presence of mind to take in the newcomer. I know who he is. I would recognize the dark hair, the intimidating presence, and the kingly beard from among a million faces. I simply cannot believe it. He should not be here. They should not be here. Greetings, little princess. It has been quite some time. We have a lot of catching up to do.